Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Launch Week 10. I'm Steph Beckett,
And I'm Megan Dutta.
and we are so glad that you guys are here. If you guys have joined other launch weeks before, you probably have an idea of how this is going to go. But if you have not, if this is your first time, oh my gosh, welcome. Hi.
Yay.
So, first of all, just for joining live, you are eligible for 2.5 CTSRUs, and that is if you are live all day. Answer those poll questions that pop up right under this video window when you see them change. Those are just so that we can gauge how you are spending your time, that you're actually watching it, I guess.
But Steph, this year you can also earn CTSD or CTSI. And I think this is the
Yes,
first time we've had CTSI for launch week. So that's
exactly.
exciting.
That's really exciting. And if you join all week live, you get 2.5 CTSRUs or D or IRUs per day. And that is 10 if you can do math like me. And that's a third of what you need to renew. So just for joining all week, you've like done your work for the year. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
And we have not today, not tomorrow, but Wednesday is home AV day. And that day
mhm.
only you can earn CEUs from Cedia. So be sure to tune in on that day as well because you can get the double credits this time.
Exactly. So, if this is your first time here, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about how to use our platform to the fullest. So, if you look to our right, this is where you can ask the questions to any of our presenters today. Megan and I both love when audience members ask questions. It helps us. It helps the content be more engaging and it's more fun. So, please, if you have a question about anything you're seeing or a question that you would like me or Megan to ask the presenters, please put it in that area to our right where it says submit question. And then below us, like we said, those are the poll questions. Those will be refreshing a few times today. So make sure to utilize that because we will be gauging how responsive you guys are.
Hey, and we
Um,
also for filling out the polls, we select two random winners for Amazon gift cards. So
love. That's
per
awesome.
day. Yeah, so you can't go wrong.
Like you can't go wrong. So then you scroll and you see this like giant chat window. So this is networking. And we love for you guys to use that because you can literally message everyone who is online today, as you can see people are doing and saying hi from where they're coming from. But you can also click on people's names and direct message them if you guys want to conversate a little bit about what you're seeing. If you keep scrolling down, you can check out the agenda for today, and that is all the information of what you are going to see. We got a lot of great stuff planned for you today. So let's just walk through that a little bit. So obviously, Megan and I are talking to you guys to get us started at 12:45. We are going to play a really good interview that I did with Kira Johnson of Televic, telling you guys a little bit about the Televic Unite system. And then we're going to have a panel on enhancing your learning environment with AV over IP. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this. And then at 2 p.m., Megan is going to host a quick session on AI and EdTech, a few things that you should know and pay attention to. And then at 2:15, we're going to have a general EdTech update. This is just going to be everything that has happened in the recent news, things that you should be paying attention to, cool trends, important things. And then we are going to close out the day strong. Gary Kay is going to hop on and join us for a session with Carl Harville of Aver, and they are going to be talking about learning equity in hybrid and high flex classrooms. So this is an exciting day of content for you guys. So you are in for a treat.
Steph, I just want to do a quick thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Aver. And if you want to learn more about Aver, you can go to Aver, that's AVER, USA.com, AVERUSA.com, and check them out. They have things like PTZ cameras, enterprise USB video conferencing cameras, medical grade PTZ cameras, all in one cameras, mobile device charging, document system or document cameras. So they have a lot of cool stuff. Be sure to head to their website and check them out, and we can have somebody drop that link in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then also thank you to Televic. They empower critical communication across the globe with innovative products and systems. They're in markets like conferencing, education, healthcare, rail systems. They have over 75 years of experience, and they are just an exciting company to check out. You'll see some more from Steph, and if you want to learn more about them, go to televic.com, televic.com.
Exactly. And we also have some really great association partners, and they are really awesome because they help us pick out some cool content and make sure that we are keeping everything relevant to our audience. And so, big thank you to both IDEA and to HETMA. If you are not aware of who HETMA is, I can tell you a little bit about them. So, this is the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. And so, if you are a tech manager at a college or university, this group does really, really awesome work to just make sure that you're on top of trends, a place for you guys to connect and network, and kind of just have this network of support in this industry, which I think is really important because I do think that in history, I think like technology managers have not had like a good network of support. And they've kind of been on their own silo, like their own AV silo. So it's really cool that this community has come out, and this group does really, really great work. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about them, you can go to hetma.org.
Yeah, and we'll have a lot of the HETMA members actually speaking today, so that's exciting. Another one of our partners these are partners for the week, but specifically for this day, we wanted to shout out our education focus ones. So we want to thank the Illinois Digital Educators Alliance, or IDEA. They've played a vital role in supporting the integration of technology in education since 1986. So you may think like, oh, this is just for Illinois. They're actually not. They have people that join from the surrounding states. It's really cool because this is actually a group of educators that are into technology. And so they're actually in the classroom, and they love to learn about the latest AV things and how they can implement those in their classroom. And especially, I know we've talked a lot with them about how AI plays a role in the classroom. We're actually going to have Stephanie Crawford, who's their director, talk about that in the AI session later today. And they put on a fun event called IdeaCon. This year it's going to, or I should say next year, it's going to be February 17th through 19th. And that's going to be here in the Chicagoland area. So if you are anywhere near, I would suggest attending because it's a really fun event. They have a lot of great educational sessions, a pretty big show floor with people you'll recognize. Like last time I went, AVI-SPL was there, Ben Q was there. There's lots of people you'll recognize, and new stuff you'll learn about that you didn't know you needed in the classroom.
That's awesome. And I will mention that HETMA usually goes to a lot of the trade shows that we know and love. They are at Infocom every year. They have a booth, at least they have in recent years. And I think that's the one where they have like a really, really big presence. But yeah, and they also do a lot of really good work letting people who are coming out of high school know that our industry exists and kind of helping them get into this career because as one thing in AV people tend to have in common, it's that like they kind of fell into their jobs instead of like always knowing that they wanted to do this. So I think it's really cool that they're providing a career path for those who are entering our industry. So yeah, both of them do really, really good stuff. Yeah, sorry.
I want to thank our other sponsors because we do have other sponsors, or not sponsors, partners for the week. So Avixa, big shout out to them. And you'll be hearing from them on Pro AV Day, which is Thursday. They're going to give kind of a state of the industry and talk about their IOTA report, which is going to be super exciting. CEDIA is a partner this year. Obviously, you're getting CEDIA credits on Home AV Day. They will also be speaking about their advocacy efforts and the state of the market on Home AV Day. EDGE, thank you so much. Digital Signage Federation, SAVE, Sustainability and AV. We're big fans of SAVE. Steph and I both are really into sustainability. So if you don't know about them, be sure to head to their website, which I believe is Save AV. Let me check that real quick. It is saveav.org. Yeah. So be sure to check them out and see how you can help be a good steward to the planet while working in technology. And last but not least, women in AVIT. They're always so supportive for us, and they have a really great mission. And we have a lot of their members joining us as speakers this week as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. Wave It is also really good about having really cool outreach programs to women from, or girls even from, elementary school age all the way through high school, of letting them know that this industry exists and helping them build a career trajectory. So all the organizations who are doing really cool outreach work always garner like a lot of respect from me. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I think it's so fun. And let's just give a quick overview of the rest of the week while we're at it. So
Yeah,
tomorrow
right.
is Experiential Tech Day. So what does that mean? It's a combination, I would say, of like digital signage and experiential tech. Is that a good
Mhm.
explanation, Steph? So
Yeah,
you'll
yeah, kind of thinking future forward, but also digital signage because I do think digital signage is kind of a future forward
yeah.
segment of the industry because it's kind of like this weird cornerstone between technology, providing information, and also advertising.
Yeah, and I think the way we tend to talk about digital signage, like before it was basically any signage was digital signage, and now like we're not so much talking about, a 2 by 2 wall in a lobby.
Right.
That's more of a standard install. We're talking about the experiential stuff where they're using
Mhm.
lights, sound, all your senses to really engage you and, advance things like the analytics behind all of this and customer engagement. So we're going to get a preview first of DSE and stuff. Is that with you or Gary?
Um, Gary.
Gary. Okay, so Gary's giving us
Mhm.
a preview of DSE Digital Signage
Had to think
Experience,
about it.
which is that is happening in December, the firstish week of December,
Mhm.
and then
7th
Steph is
through
going to have
10th.
Steph is going to have an awesome panel about experience design and crafting immersive journeys. Steph, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to design, it's just so much more than you would think it would be. So I'm really interested to dig in and talk about things from even more than a technical perspective, from like an artistic perspective and everything like that. So this is kind of my chance to get a little artsy with it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I love it. After that, and you'll notice this week we have an AI session in every single day. So we're going to talk about AI and
Yeah.
experiential tech. We're going to be talking with Manuel Magro and Blaine Brown. Then the experiential tech update, which Steph mentioned for today. It's the same thing. We're just going to be talking in general about what's going on in the industry, what's trending, looking
Yep.
ahead. And then our friend Mark Coxon is going to do a session on his own. I'm really excited for this. It's called The Misconception About Experiential Technology.
And he's such an engaging speaker that you guys have to come. It's gonna be such a treat.
Yeah.
He's such a fun person to just watch,
Yeah.
and listen to a presentation from. So, it's gonna be worth it, trust me. And then Home AV Day is Wednesday. Even if you do not traditionally spec residential products, I do think this is still gonna be a worthy day for you to join because if there's one thing that I learned at CEDIA Expo and CIX in September, it's that like lines are starting to blur between residential and commercial. And so I think that trends are starting to go on either side. So I think this is still going to be a really worthy day for everyone to join.
Yeah. I'm stoked. And then we're going to be talking with Modern Atomics. And Steph, I know
Mhm.
you really kind of fell in love with them at CEDIA. Do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, so they have a couple of really cool products that help to power a few things in your home, including this product that we're going to spend time talking about that powers your motored shade system in your home, but it can also be used in commercial environments. But it can actually save their product saves you so much energy, and they're really involved with save. So I think that from like a money saving perspective and from a energy saving perspective, this product is really, really cool. And you are definitely going to want to come and check it out. So, yeah.
Yeah, and from there we're going to roll into a. I think this topic, Steph came up with this topic, and I think it's a really neat one. Upgrading DIY installs with the professionals. So basically, what happens when your customers come to you and they have, a home theater system and their home is all
Mhm.
wired, but like they did it themselves. How do you handle those upgrades? Like, what are you keeping? What are you getting rid of? And honestly, a lot of this applies to Pro AV too, because I'm sure you can translate that into like you walk into, they did the conference room themselves, which I think is really common. Stoked about that. We're
Mhm.
going to roll from that into the AI and home AV. Then Steph is going to do a home AV update. And then
Mhm.
Celia is going to present.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next day is going to be Pro AV Day. We're finishing strong with that. So I have a session starting out the day with my good friends at TV1. We are talking about the Calico Pro video processor. And this is officially shipping. So we're talking all about what this thing can do. It is so powerful, so cool. So I'm really, really excited for that session. And then you guys are going to want to come to this. This is a Gary K session, if I've ever heard one. This is the Great AV Connectivity Roundtable. So this is all about the proponents of ways to send a signal, and we're all talking about all of those ways, what's best in what environment. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, Gary is going to totally nerd out on this one and have
Yes,
a blast. I'm excited to
that
watch
is
that.
that is a Gary K panel for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So after that, we're going to do AI in Pro AV with Mark Peterson and Dave Hatz. It's going to be super fun. Steph's going to do the Pro AV update, and then we're going to hear from Sean Margo at Avixa. And he's going to talk about, like I said earlier, their industry outlook and trends analysis so you can see what's coming up and what's been happening.
Yep, exactly. So that's the week that we have planned for you, and we hope that you are as excited about it as we are. So, okay, I think that we have gone over all of our housekeeping, I hope.
Yeah. Steph,
Okay.
are you ready to talk to Televic and show us something new?
Yep, I think that I am ready to start the day. So we are going
Awesome.
to roll this interview between me and Kira Johnson of Televic, and you guys are going to learn all about Televic's Unite system. So check this out. Hey everyone, so excited about this first session of EdTech Day of Launch Week 10. Joining me is Kira Johnson of Televic, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking a little bit about Televic's Unite system. This is a new product, or kind of new to those of us who are on this side of the pond. So first of all, I'm really excited. Can you just walk us through a little bit about what the Televic Unite system is before we jump in?
Of course, yes. Thanks for having me. Televic now has a wireless communication system called Unite Wireless Microphones, and I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah. So, first of all, tell me about a few of the features of this Unite system that set it apart from other products that are already on the market.
Yeah. So Unite really is a Swiss Army knife type concept. I mean, you can see, I do have it here with me, a system set up. You can see we now offer a wireless microphone. We also offer through our system the option to have different transmitters and bring to you a professional level audio. So interfaces such as a mini XLR on our transmitter, a USB-C in and out, as well as 3.5 line in and out. You also have the option to have a receiver that's either one or two-way. It doesn't require participants now to have a transmitter. You actually can have a two-way conversation with our TalkBack receiver, which is a nice step up. Another key difference is our chargers. So we've got a configurable charging dock. This is our 4-unit charging dock here. This is a really great step up or key difference of systems that are available because you can configure each charger differently, no matter the amount of devices you have, which is great for applications that may use systems really close to each other or might be switching up from day to day. We also pull in our AP4. So it's a wireless access point that allows you to broadcast or receive audio and brings you both Dante and analog in and out.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So, there are some pain points that typically come with a wireless communication system, but Unite's whole thing is that it addresses a lot of these. Do you want to walk through that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think a lot in this market, you'll find limitations with functionality. You'll find some limitations with ease of use or even quality of the audio. And Unite really tackles all of that. You know, it's super user friendly. It allows you to make configurations in docking stations. It allows you to change settings on the transmitter and really doesn't require anything from point of view. And moderation of the system is very easy. Again, with that docking station, making configurable settings from one application to the next is a key seller there. We call it dock and go. All you do is you're able to save those configurations in this the charger. Any participant can come over with their receiver, drop it into that pre-configured charger. It can be completely empty, again, regardless of how many number of participants or devices you have in the room, and it will then save those configurations to the device. They'll be paired to the room and that audio configuration. You also come across, quality of audio, where Televic has been. We're a leader, I would say, in communication. And so we know the requirement there to have something that you can access easily. That's why our Pro audio interfaces is a key selling point, along with the Dante and analog in and out on the access point. So you can bring our audio in any space and take our audio to any space. So it really sets us apart. It really allows us to tackle the mainstream frustrations with a wireless system. I think for sure Unite tackles it well.
Very cool. So you mentioned that it suits for a lot of environments and applications. Do you want to tell me like any specific use cases where this product really shines?
Right. So like I've said before, when we talk about the Swiss Army knife type concept, there really isn't an application where wireless communication is needed that Unite can't fit the bill. One that comes to mind and is often a question that comes up is in applications that require changes from one use case to the next, like rentals or events, or say even courts. Something that's popped up a lot in courts is the need to have, assistive listening as well as live language translation. And then even having the possibility to have wireless communication in the courtroom for prosecution and defense. And Unite really does that. It allows you to take a single charging station or a single 4-bay system. You can have 2 receivers set up for your participants if they need assistance in hearing, so your ADA requirement is covered. You also have the possibility for language, say this hearing needs to be translated. You can also use 2 transmitters in this charging pack, say set one aside for your live translator who is translating this hearing in Spanish, and send the other, if it be a body pack or a handheld, to your prosecution and defense for live presentations, utilizing one system. And then on top of that, you bring in the AP4. The AP4 allows you to take that audio and send it to wherever it needs to go, the court of record. If you need to send it through discussion systems or overhead hearing for the rest of the audience, you're able to do so. So it really tackles many applications. Like I said, it is a great fit for needing to change or having applications that have multiple devices. It eliminates the need to do that because you can tackle all of those use cases with a single system, rather than having multiple devices dedicated to a single use case where Unite could do that.
Very cool. So from everything that you have shown me and talked about so far, it seems like this system is really easy to set up and use. So how easy would you say this would be for environments that are quite fast-paced, where you just need to pick it up and use it?
Yeah, so Unite is definitely designed for quick and easy application, especially in times where it's changing on the fly, or you have a big event and you need to be able to open up cases and hand devices out and just know that they're paired. Obviously, the charging docking Go system helps do that, but it also is just a testament. I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to plug in one of the transmitters and actually use it as my device. This is showing you how easy it is to switch from a headset type device to pulling in, say, a virtual call. You can do so swiftly. Can you hear me okay on that end?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So, I mean, it really does show. I'm going to unplug it now. You might lose me for a second, but it really does show a testament of how easily you can deploy a system, and how easily you can interface with other products, other applications to pull audio and include audio in a wireless design.
Very cool. So another big concern for a lot of the people watching is security, especially when it comes to wireless systems. So what steps has Televic taken to ensure that this system provides really secure communication?
That's a great question. So, security has always been a heightened topic with Televic, especially with our background, where we live, where our products live, our institutions, mostly in government. Security is a high priority for us. Unite utilizes the DECT 1.9 gigahertz system. It also is encrypted with AES 256. We want to make sure you're confident in our system as well as we are. And that's not just Unite, that's all Televic products. Security is a high priority for us and our company.
Very cool. So I think we have a little bit of time if you would like to just continue walking me through a couple of the key features and how they work live. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah, of course, yeah. So some of Televic's greatest success, I would say, at least in my background, I have some history in assistive listening in a community that requires devices um, and really needs that assistive option. Where Unite comes in, especially for me, is being able to tackle multiple things. When you come across projects or you have an application and your budget doesn't allow for multiple devices, I feel sometimes assistive listening gets put on the back burner. Um,
Mhm.
and so it is a passionate subject for me. I do love our Unite system because it's capable of not only providing for assistive listening, for live or language distribution, as well as live presentations. You can take a single system and have it set up, say, for a courtroom or in a council chamber or for an event space. And the next day, you don't need a wireless handheld. Instead, you need body packs with lapel mics. You're able to really configure and change on the fly. One thing I don't think we really talked about, or I might have breezed over, so forgive me, is its ability to pull in professional grade audio as well as DSP functionality. So it's got an auto ducker in there for you. So if you were to connect your phone or a Bluetooth device, you'd be able to moderate what audio level it would come in at. Have it allows you to really incorporate so much of an existing space into a wireless system, which really sets us apart, especially coming from a place where it could be used for assistive listening, or it could be used for wireless presentation, or audio distribution, or live translation. Um, that's the key point there, is it really truly is a Swiss Army knife product. Whatever application may require wireless microphones, Unite has you covered.
Very cool. So one of my last questions for you is what is next for Televic and the Unite system? Are there any updates or additional features on the horizon that we should keep a lookout for?
Yeah, so Televic, I mean, we're always looking for innovation, right? We're always looking forward. We're wanting to know how we can constantly improve. We've had over 75 years of experience in communication. A couple of key things that we're looking for with Unite is being able to explore new features of integration. That's a big thing right now in our space, where being able to tie a wireless system into an established room easily and conveniently and budget worthy. We want to be able to allow that to happen. So we're exploring more and more features there, as well as simultaneous use on multi-channel distribution. So stay tuned. I know there's a lot on the roadmap. We'll launch more information, but definitely we're already on it, adding more features for future use.
Very cool. Well, I have one final question for you, Kira, and it's a real easy one. Where can people find more information about Televic?
Oh, perfect. So you can find more information obviously on our website, which is just www.televic.com/conference, or you can send us an email. Me and the rest of the sales team are here to answer any questions. Send any information over, which is just sales@televic.us is our US sales team.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thanks for helping me get EdTech Day kicked off.
Steph, yes, of course. Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to show you Unite. We look forward to more interviews like this.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to get the rest of the day started.
Thank you so much to Kira and the rest of the LAVNCH team for that, and for sponsoring that session. If you have any questions about LAVNCH or about the Unite system, you can click on that ad that is directly below the Q&A on my right, and that will take you to their contact form. So you can ask their team any questions. Really excited for our next session of the day, that is enhancing learning environments with AV over IP. So let's go ahead and bring on our guests. Joining me for this is Jeremy Caldera, Annie Foster, and Jimmy Singleton. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
So before I jump in and just start hammering you guys with questions, I wanted to let you guys just go around and each introduce yourselves, talk about who you are and what you do for a couple minutes. So Annie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. My name is Annie Foster. I live in Lexington, Virginia, working at Washington and Lee University. We're a small university. And prior to that, I was in Pennsylvania working in higher ed. I've been here about 3 years, and currently we are working on a capital project building that we are going to be installing AV over IP. So this seemed like a perfect opportunity to talk about it.
That's awesome. Jimmy, what about you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jimmy Singleton. I am the manager of state and local education at AVI-SPL. I cover North America, but I'm based in Southern California. I used to work in higher education. I was at the University of Southern California, where we did a large AV over IP rollout. So this conversation topic popped up, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about what I did then, and then what we're talking about now with universities all over the country.
Very cool. Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Jeremy Caldera with Pearl Technology. We're an AV integration house and focus a lot on higher education and just do a mountain of AV over IP work. So happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and say to our audience that if you guys have any questions throughout this, I will pepper your questions in between my own. So feel free to ask those at any time. I like it when you guys participate. So first of all, I'm just going to throw this out to anyone who would like to start. So what is the current state of AV over IP in classrooms today, and how would you describe it?
I can start on that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I talk with a lot of universities all over the country, and it's a little bit different everywhere we go of, what people are actually using it for. I think when I was working in higher ed, it was like AV over IP, we can send AV anywhere we want, anytime we want. And it's like, that's cool. And then we put it in, and then we were like, when are we actually going to send it to another room? Like what's the actual use case there? Right. So I think that portion of actually sending signal over IP was not as big as we were hoping for. But then it became, more of like, are we just replacing a matrix switch with a network switch in a classroom? How much remote monitoring can we get out of it? How much data can we pull from putting things on the network? So we see a lot of kind of, as we talk with different universities, it's, everyone's kind of got a different plan. Unless they're doing like broadcast, they may not be sending it really over IP. They're just, replacing equipment that used to be in room with putting it on a network switch instead.
And that's my experience too on campus. Selling the cross campus classroom to classroom solution is less of a selling point. And so we're really focusing on what can it do within one classroom and how can we extend the capabilities of that classroom. And it seems like, there's a lot of options there with USB switching and reporting, like Jimmy said.
I think I agree. I'm seeing that as the 90% use case, right? Keeping it internal, like you said, just replacing the matrix switch with the network switch. But a lot of what I am seeing, though, is overflow situations within buildings. So you're not necessarily moving data or video or content across the campus, but you are moving it across the building itself. A lot of that just has to do with bandwidth, network requirements, things of that nature. And, with Zoom and Teams and everything else that we've got going on, there's easier ways to move data and video across the campus at much more reasonable costs now. So, like I said, I'm definitely seeing it classroom to classroom, but those overflow situations are coming up more and more when it comes into collaboration between classrooms and things of that nature.
That's a good point. So when an institution decides that they want to adopt AV over IP solutions in their educational environments, what technical considerations should they keep in mind?
I think
Jimmy, you want
network
to?
team.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say, you want to start us off again?
I was gonna say, making sure that you're like best buddies with your network team. That's probably the biggest part of this, right? Is you're asking a lot of infrastructure, and making sure that there's enough space available, there's enough switches available, there's enough bandwidth available. It's not something that should be taken lightly or done quickly, right? You can't just say flip a switch and say I'm going to do AV over IP tomorrow and not tell anybody. So I would say, having that relationship with the network team and then asking them specifically, and trying to bridge that gap between AV and networking and say, hey, we have enough to handle what we're trying to do. And then it comes back down to that use case of like, are we really sending it within the building? If we are, then maybe we need more. Maybe if we're just keeping it within classrooms, maybe we can get away with smaller switches or whatever it may be.
I'm finding a lot that we're keeping the AV network closed, right? So the only thing that's really touching the corporate network or the classroom network, if you will, of the university is really a port for management, remote diagnostics. Sometimes we're taking the wireless video presentation kind of stuff because it's got to integrate with WAPs that are existing in the building for the student network and things like that. So we can do collaboration presentation, but that's really the only stuff that we're, most of the time we're putting on the network, right? I think we really are trying to keep that isolated because we can control that quality of service. We can control everything that has to happen, the required PoE, the required bandwidth. There's just a lot that goes with that. But yeah, definitely make friends with the IT department. That's the big thing because you're going to have something on the IT network. But I'm just finding more and more that it's more closed than anything else.
Yeah. Along the lines of what Jimmy was saying, I start all of my processes when I'm like trying to figure out what to put into a room with the question of, can it do what we're currently doing? And so that's where I begin and make sure that we're not adding any interruptions or complications to the system. Definitely don't want any delay involved. And so that's what I'm looking at. I am working with the networking team, whether I'm going to choose to go with their network switches or my own. I'm still going to rely on them for their expertise in that area. And so building that relationship is really, it's what I'm focusing on right now.
That's important. So when it comes to AV over IP, do you guys think, in your opinions, that it has potential to create a more immersive learning environment? And if so, do you think that could potentially enhance collaboration between students and teachers, kind of creating this like very ultra low latency environment? Or do you think that it doesn't matter?
Well,
I
the
would
word
say it's getting
immersive is
there.
very subjective, right? And
Yeah,
how
that's
that,
actually true.
how do you apply that, right, within a situation? Because when you think of more immersive stuff, I think more collaboration than I think immersive, unless you're talking about some kind of super specialized thing, and in which case AV over IP is just going to be a transport method, and you're going to want to make sure there's no latency, there's none of this other stuff that's going to go with that. But is it going to make it more immersive? I don't know. Like I said, that's a subjective thing we can talk about, but it definitely enhances the collaboration between everybody, because especially when you start bringing in wireless devices and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of a similar thing. It's a great point, Jeremy. But like the ability to add multiple screens in a room. Like I think we saw the active learning classroom a long time ago, and they were like, just put wheels on chairs, and now it's an active classroom. And that's not what makes an active classroom, right? It's more about the pedagogy behind it and stuff like that. So if you have this room that's unlimited scalability, right? We can add multiple displays, and we can put we can put endpoints wherever we want to put endpoints. Then maybe it becomes more immersive in that fact, but I think it becomes more collaborative for sure. And being able to have people move around and do things at different stations with different groups of people and working together, whether it's wireless sharing or they all have their own screen or their own shared screen or whatever it may be.
Well, and maybe it's related to immersive, but I think of more accessibility. I think the options for making our content and our teaching environments more accessible are easier to achieve with AV over IP.
That's a really good point. Um, in terms of scalability, too, I think that that's another important thing. And I think that that's a big selling point for AV over IP. And that's kind of a keyword that a lot of people tend to gravitate toward when they're talking about, the pros of AV over IP versus other options. So, how can AV over IP, in your opinions, support those growing educational demands across like giant campuses, multi-site institutions, where scalability in terms of like potential growth could be an important kind of selling point?
At my institution, it's kind of hard to ask for money for a hot swap that's going to sit on the shelf. So especially when it's a $15,000 hot swap. So for us, it's pretty obvious as soon as you do the math and you show the people, the stakeholders, that well, this is only going to be a $1,500 investment that's going to sit on the shelf. It's just an easy yes at that point.
Yeah, and I would say too, like even inside of a classroom, right? I think like I said, like you you add one projector when you start, but then classrooms change and they want to add 2 more TVs on the side walls. I think that becomes a lot easier, right? It's not like, well, we have to get rid of the whole matrix switch that's in the closet because we ran out of outputs on it, and we have to, and then we have a perfectly good matrix switch that sits somewhere else, or maybe we reuse it somehow. But it's just, let's add an endpoint and run a cat cable to that other place. And then, campus wide, I think it helps with standards, hopefully, right? Moving building to building. If you can say, well, we've already done it over here, and all we have to do is recreate it when we move over to this new building that's going up or capital project that's happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. Having like standardizing on one product that you don't have to relearn, you don't have to retrain, you don't have to recall whenever you go into a different room and it's a different DSP. It takes time away from the teaching and learning, which is what we're supposed to be supporting, to relearn how to make a modification in a room. And so, yeah, standardizing is huge.
Yeah, I think scalability is critical for AV over IP. I mean, the beauty of it is, unlike the old HD-based T days where you could cap out your matrix switcher with so many inputs and outputs, you kind of don't have that limitation anymore. You're not having to replace the entire back end just to add 2 more displays or 2 more sources. So although you might be paying a little bit more up front, it just really, at a certain point, it becomes more cost effective as well, right? So it's not only a better product and more scalable, but it is actually more cost effective. So, I definitely see that as being one of the biggest things that's a bonus for this. So.
Yeah,
That's
and I think
actually
too, like
fair.
the cost side of it, the the data management and data collection too. I think IT's done it for so long, right? Like they've been monitoring networks for years and years, and I think AV's done it at some level, but maybe not at the level that we'd hope to do it. So I think that helps sell that idea too of like, it puts it more in an IT term. So when you're presenting a budget to an IT leadership, it's I think a little bit easier to sell AV over IP in that sense.
So, to Annie's earlier point about accessibility, so as we kind of see AV over IP potentially become more widespread in education for the reasons that you guys laid out, so how can institutions balance that innovation with accessibility and ensuring that technology actually enhances inclusion rather than creating barriers? That's a really hard one. I'm sorry that I just threw that to you guys. I was like, answer it quickly.
It's a good question. Whenever we talk accessibility, it's oftentimes in higher education, it becomes a afterthought, which is unfortunate and shouldn't be the way it is. But it does come up at the end of the conversation most often. So as far as like inclusion and all that, I think it comes down to like, we talk meeting equity a lot for anything virtual learning, right? Like, is everybody included in it? Does everybody have a say? Does everybody have a seat at the table? And then as far as, endpoints in a classroom, are we talking about assistive listening on AV over IP? How much are we including that in? Is that the first step in every classroom? Or is it, in a closet somewhere that they have to bring out every time someone asks for it, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of layers to it, but I think the point being that it really should be the first question that you ask before even, saying here's what we're going to do in the building, is like, let's make sure we hit this bare minimum of where we should be. And then anything we do on top of that is great and amazing, and we can do more.
Well, that's where it comes down to standardization, right? When your enterprise is working on standardization, that makes things a lot easier, and not having to have that attic stock like you were talking about, or just a bunch of gear laying around. You just want to have everything accessible to you. You want to have it so it's quick and easy deployment, quick and easy learning curve. Like you said, Annie, you want to go back to what you're doing, which is teaching, and not having to worry about fighting the technology just to get going every day.
Yeah, and we talked about building relationships with network team. I think also this is where building relationships with the pedagogical leaders on your campus is really important, and making sure that they're training the teachers in a way that complements the technology. I loved the document cameras during the pandemic, but I am ready for document cameras to go away and for people to start using wireless devices and writing notes on wireless devices so that they can be shared a lot easier.
Yeah. And I would say too, like along with the pedagogical team, there's a lot of campuses have accessibility teams, right? Like things that we're not thinking about as tech managers most of the time, that they think about a lot more often because they're getting requests for it. There's an interesting thing about like assistive listening, that if someone has to ask for assistive listening, they're like 90% likely to not ask for it because it makes them feel like they're outed by going up to your teacher and saying, hey, can you wear this separate pack for me and I'll put headphones on in the back. Whereas if they can, scan a QR code and, connect it to their device that's already connected to their hearing aids or whatever it may be, they're a lot more likely to do it. So things like that, that I just don't think we think about as often unless we're affected by it.
That's fair. That's a fair point. So what you guys also brought up a lot was that in order to build this entire AV over IP system, you're going to have to really collaborate closely with your IT team. So how can educators and IT professionals, in your opinions, collaborate effectively to ensure that those AV over IP systems implemented are truly going to enhance those teaching and learning outcomes? It's another hard one that I just was like, here you go, enjoy.
I think a lot of the collaboration has to happen with the educators, right? It's not just the IT team. It's the people who are using the systems, because we'll find that some people are just old school and they're stuck in their ways. They don't want to learn technology. They hate technology. Some embrace it, but you're going to have this wide gamut of instructors at any campus that are either going to full board go in and figure out how to use it, and you're going to have some that aren't. So anything we can do to make the technology easier and coordinate with IT and just make life simple is going to make adoptability that much better. And that's kind of critical to the whole thing, because the last thing you want in a university is students going from one instructor to another instructor, or one class to another class, and utilizing the same technology, even though it's a standard, completely differently, right? So there's that I think that needs to happen more than coordination with everybody is important, but especially with IT. But I think the coordination with the instructors and the end users is the most critical point here.
I'm finding that we're having to take a step back and kind of define assumptions within my team and then define assumptions within the networking team, because we're coming at this from two totally different angles. And my understanding of what I need is very different than their understanding of what they need. And so really kind of approaching it in a kind of scholarly way If anybody else has other suggestions, I am open to them, but that's where I'm at right now.
I've seen some really good success with like people who have liaisons on their team in a sense, and it doesn't work for every university, right? Everyone's got limitations on how much staffing they can have and stuff like that. But I know there's plenty of universities that hire, a network admin for their AV team, because they just need someone who can have the conversation and knows how to talk to the networking team, beyond the white papers that we get from the Trons of the world, and we try to hand those over and say, read this and tell us what you think. Then I think we end up just not on the same page about what we both want after the fact. But to Jeremy's point too, there's plenty of other teams too that have to get involved from the pedagogy side, that if you can go and put in as much technology as you want, but if no one wants to use it, then there's no real point to having it all in there.
So we got a question in from an audience member. This is from Gavin. Gavin asked, looking at the scalability that AV over IP brings to the table, what would you say would be the tipping point to decide to start designing an AV over IP solution for a venue compared to sticking with legacy HD-based T solutions where they might meet the pedagogical needs of the venue for now? How do you get academics to embrace a more high-tech pedagogy?
Speaking from experience, I would say I'm really doing the math on each space that I'm evaluating for AV over IP. I think if it's like kind of a wash in the end, then throwing in like, okay, well, if we want to have this room up 24/7, we're going to need a hot swap, and that'll be a $15,000 expense on top of that, or a $1,500 expense. Helps to tip the scales.
And I will say on the pedagogy side of things, getting them to embrace this kind of technology, I think comes from the students a lot too, of what they're expecting. Students are coming out of a K-12 classroom that they've had an interactive flat panel for the last 12 years of schooling, right? And they've spent time walking up to that and using it and writing on it. And then they go to college and it's, 300 people in a classroom staring at a blackboard and one person talking for an hour. Is it really any different? That then the students are like, well, I could have sat at home and done this class on Zoom, right? I didn't get any personal inclusivity in this class. So then they review and then they want more, and student expectations go up. And then I think faculty expectations are raised by student expectations, because that's their customer. And then hopefully they're willing to change, but working with the instructional technology team and making sure they understand what's going into classrooms so that they can train faculty on what they should expect when they walk into a room.
I think in an ideal world, everybody's forward thinking and they want the latest and greatest. In a more realistic world, you really just got to, from me as an integrator, it comes down to the sales team properly explaining the pros and cons of the old school way and the new way of doing things, right? But when it all comes down to it at the end, it's all dollars and cents, especially when it comes to educational institutions. So if you can not only explain the differences and the reasoning why you should be going this way, if you can have numbers to back that up, like Annie was saying, that's what's gonna sell this every time, right? And it's not, even if it's more expensive up front, if you can come up with numbers to say, hey, what's my long-term ROI, right, on this? That's what's gonna help. So.
Yeah, that's good advice. So as we see more institutions potentially adopting AV over IP for distance learning, what are the key privacy and security concerns that educational institutions should be aware of, and how can they mitigate these risks?
Well,
That's another
a
really
distance
hard
learning standpoint anymore, we're using third-party platforms, right? So we're relying on any encryption security that they're going to be providing, which is far better than it was back in 2020, right? When you heard of the random people dropping into classrooms on Zoom calls and stuff, right?
Oh, yes.
But we're going to start to see that more and more. For me, the concerns for securing things have less to do with distant learning type applications and more to do with securing your network, right? Securing the devices that are on your network. so that you're not gonna, I don't want the AV equipment to be the reason why, 30,000 students' confidential records and social security numbers were leaked out to everybody, right? So I think understanding how the importance there is going to be more vital than encrypting or securing your far end stuff, because we're going to rely on the Microsofts of the world and stuff like, the Zooms of the world to do that. So.
I would agree with that. I think, the goal is to not be the one that causes the problem, right? With any security concern in a university or any corporation or whatever it may be. Changing the password from admin to something else that's a little bit more of an IT standard. But I think that's where it comes back to IT versus AV standards, right? Like, the great part about AV standards is there's so many to choose from. There's no real set limitation on it. Where I think IT's always had a little bit more of like the ITIL practice and a little more standardized on the way they approach, security and privacy concerns within, actual hardware units. But I agree with Jeremy completely. Like, Zoom's got, the HIPAA side of it covered, right? It's not on us if we use Zoom and something happens with Zoom. It's kind of about mitigating risk as much as possible where you can.
Well, and from my campus, hearing from lecturers being concerned about, like, where is this going? Like, my audio is getting recorded, the camera's in the room pointing at me, where is it going? And convincing them that we're not recording at all times is one thing. But I think what the benefits of AV over IP, where you can switch USB devices to a host computer, that gives them the control to know what's happening. If they see that device ending up on their laptop, maybe it's a little more reassuring that they have control over their intellectual property that they are presenting in the classroom.
That's a really good point. I think the intellectual property one pops up all the time, right? Where people are like, you're gonna sell my lecture and then you won't need me anymore, and and then I'll get fired or whatever it is, which I don't think has ever been the goal of recording.
It's like a lot of work to want to do.
I think I've heard that like once or twice, and then it just that seems to have died off, that mentality lately, I think. So
one could hope,
I hope so. I mean, I haven't seen it as much. I definitely saw it a couple of years ago, but not so much now.
I mean, everyone's being recorded some way or somehow. So
yeah,
I think most people have probably gotten over. But yeah, when Lecture Capture first came out, it was like, they're trying to take my job, I was like, I don't think anybody wants.
Like, who is they in this question? Like, answer that first.
None of us have time.
AI, it's all AI.
I saw iRobot once. I know all I need to know. So this is kind of an experience-based question. So what are some of the most significant technical challenges you guys have encountered when implementing AV over IP solutions in educational settings, and how did you overcome them? You can think on that for a second if you need to.
I got a whole Rolodex of that.
Great. We're ready.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it has to do, on the very fundamental level, where we are working one-on-one with like data contractors, right? So we're working with the people now, because we're not necessarily going in. Like before, we would install the cabling for HDBaseT, but now I'm relying on the other low voltage and data contractors to install and certify the cabling that I'm going to use to jump onto the backbone to do the video over IP infrastructure, right? So ensuring that you're working closely with those contractors is critical, because if they don't do something correctly or put the wrong cabling in or do something like that, then you're going to constantly be battling, quality of service. That's going to be a huge thing from just like the physical side. Like physical installation of cable is going to lead to quality of service issues down the road. So that's a lot of where I see my issues. Other issues come from the manufacturers. I won't throw anybody under the bus, but a lot of it just seems to be like, oh, this next firmware will fix this, or oh, this, so there's just constant firmware updates, constant, ensuring of uniform firmware between devices for, communication. And I think we actually spend more time updating firmware and troubleshooting signal flow over the network and through a network switch. Same amount of time doing that as we do the physical installation of a job itself anymore, which is unfortunate, but and I'm hoping that it's going to start getting better. I see that a lot of manufacturers, I think, sometimes release stuff earlier than maybe they should, certain software updates and things like that, and that's causing some of those issues. But ultimately, the ones we work with get it done and we get it fixed. But it's kind of all over the board what those problems could be. But communication's key, no matter who you're working with. If it's the IT team, if it's the data contractors, if it's the manufacturers, it's whatever. It's whatever you need to do, whoever you need to talk to get the job done. So.
Yeah, I'll say from the integrator side, I think I've had plenty of experience on the university side of, the network team and, fighting back and forth. And then we end up buying lunch 100 times just to forgive each other. But I think for the integrator side, I think capital projects are probably the ones that we as integrators, I think we get, we win a bid and we go in and we design a building and we know that they want to do AV over IP, but maybe it's a Crestron campus and we spec Extron or whatever it may be. Because we might not have that relationship with the actual on-campus AV support team, but we won the bid with the general contractor kind of thing. So I would say, we've learned a lot in going back to the actual AV campus support team after we win a bid and say, hey, just want to make sure you're the one supporting this after the fact. Are you okay with what we're doing? Just so that we're not, going against the bid and, getting in any sort of legal trouble, but also making sure that the customer afterwards doesn't go, well, I hate X integrator because they did this new building and it's not what we wanted it to be, because maybe they didn't have a seat at the table with the architects or something like that. So kind of helping bridge that gap from the integrator side to the actual, AV support team on campus.
Jimmy's telling my story. I think one of the things that I'm noticing is that the definition of roles is kind of unclear at this stage that we're at. We don't know who necessarily is responsible for pulling the cable, and we have to have those conversations. Who's pulling the cable? Who's terminating it? Who owns it in the end? If there's a problem with it, is it the network team? Is it the AV team? And just trying to kind of come up with a whole new set of standards.
Kind of like a new frontier in a way, like a whose problem is this to solve?
Listen, that's not a new frontier. That's a thing that's been happening for years, and it's going to continue to happen for years, unfortunately.
That's fair. Sorry. So we had another question come in from an audience member. This one is from Jennifer. Do you guys recommend that someone who is a tech manager meet regularly with IT and the professional teaching team?
100%.
I think it's always a good idea. I mean, everybody, if the tech manager is staying up with current technology, on the AV front, your IT team staying up with current technology on the IT front, especially with what both are doing throughout a campus, it's always ideal for them to talk to each other, because then when it comes to doing that implementation and not wanting to have those problems between integrators or bids or campuses or capital projects, you're one step ahead of and maybe there's a lot less lunches in there if they're regular instead of makeup lunches, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
The more conversations you have, the sooner the better it is. So
saving money.
Yeah, I would say we had, when I was at USC, we had, lunches with our IT teams pretty often, and just making sure we were all on the same page of what's going on. And I think it was easy to get. AV team was generally the one that's on campus, right? So like IT team was 3 blocks away in another building, and they'd send us an invite for an all hands meeting, like during finals week, and it's like, no, it's the wrong time. Like, are you out of your mind? We're not gonna be off campus during that time, because if problems happen, we need to be here to fix it, kind of thing. So I think there's a huge value in sharing those relationships, and then if you have a network person who's helping you, ask them if they want to go to InfoComm with you that year or whatever. If you have the opportunity to take them to a show and kind of share ideas and practices from both sides of the house, I think that helps a lot too.
So for my integrators, how do you ensure that AV over IP deployments in educational institutions remain, and I know you guys love this word, future proof, especially with like advances in technology and like changing academic needs and any other random changes that come in there?
I don't know. It's hard to future-proof anything, but
I knew you were going to say that.
Helps with that, right? Here we've got a network standard that everybody uses. So I think the improvements we're going to see in coming years is going to be just improved stuff, improved PoE, improved speed, improved reliability, improved all, integration. But as long as, if you've got some high bandwidth cable installed and you're not working on Cat 5e infrastructure or something like that, you might start to see more stuff go fiber, depending on how you're sending it. It might be infrastructure upgrades, but I love snowballing and thinking about future stuff, but it's hard to do it these days stuff just changes literally so fast, right? This is a lot of what we're using today I would have never envisioned using 7-8 years ago. So
yeah, I think everyone wants to be bleeding edge, and then by the time the building's done, the bleeding edge is no longer bleeding, right? It's like there's 10 other things. Annie, you can probably talk about with your capital project, but I'm sure whatever you spec'd day one is probably not still the spec, or still maybe current as most current option available.
Yeah, I think my project started in 2019. I forgot what I was going to say. What were we talking about?
So next question, what do you guys, so like when you are outlining this to, the IT team at a university and are saying like, yes, this is the way to go, and you try to offer them some long-term cost benefits to just really make it clear that this is the way to go. When we've talked about scalability, have we talked about potentially the ease of maintenance, energy efficiency? What are some other long-term benefits that you guys try to make clear?
I think the environmental side of it's kind of an interesting one. I think I see that more and more on bids. We have an entire team that does ESG reports and stuff like that. That they're really focused on making sure that we're explaining what we're doing, and how what we're installing is going to be the most eco-friendly possible thing at the time, and then how do we address those concerns in the future. But I think with a lot of AV over IP, I think people get a little weary about the subscription costs that come with it. And, but that's where we can kind of push back to the maintenance side of it. It's like, yeah, there is a subscription cost, but here's the 10 things, 100 things you're getting for that subscription cost, and how it's going to make your life, X times easier after the fact.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The whole subscription model, there's a lot of old school people out there that aren't really adopting that yet, but they're coming around. There's definitely some cost benefit to that. And that is the biggest shocker that I see when it comes to us giving cost to anybody, when it comes to remote management, maintenance, monitoring, that kind of thing. But there's definitely a benefit there to that. And, how do you explain it to them? You got to kind of read the people that you're talking to in that case. But, I think that just overall, when it comes to, like we said, scalability earlier, working with a network standard, that's been in place forever is going to make things a lot easier. If something breaks down the road, there's going to be hopefully easier replacement parts, right? Versus, I keep going back to like HD-based T-switchers, right? Your switcher dies. Now you might have to change out all your endpoints too, where that might not be the case. When you're dealing with AV over IP, a lot of the stuff is more integrated together when you're talking about brands and product and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of proprietary stuff out there, and it's still good. There's a lot of interoperability as well. So.
Well, and looking at the impact to the classrooms in terms of maintenance, it's much quicker for me to go in and replace one endpoint than it is if I have an amp die that's integrated into a switcher controller. How long is that room going to have to be down before I can get a replacement versus this one piece of the puzzle that can be swapped in 15 minutes, maybe, right? So I look at that kind of maintenance and think that it pays off pretty quickly. And if you calculate the amount of class time that is lost.
That's fair. So, how does the integration of AV over IP actually affect the role of these traditional AV pieces of equipment that are in educational spaces? Do you guys think that we're eventually going to move toward a fully IP based future? Or do you think that we're going to continue to kind of be in like a weird hybrid model for some time before we fully see that?
It's almost there now. I mean, honestly, we're seeing, the biggest hurdle to entry for an all IP solution is number of ports on a switch, in my opinion, because our microphones are all PoE IP. Our speakers now can be PoE and IP, and all monitored and all managed. So our endpoints. I mean, there's multiple times. We just did a whole campus upgrade where I don't think there's anything analog in the entire signal chain. I think there's one piece that's the traditional assistive listening system. We still got the Wi-Fi portion of it going on, but to meet the ADA requirement, you still have to have that traditional RF. And so those devices, at least the ones we used, didn't have a Dante jack in them, so they had to convert still analog. That's the one 6-inch piece of analog cable we had in that entire system. So I think it's there. I think audio, video, or IP is there. It's just that you're going to start to see the costs come down on it, which is good. Again, if you have it's just number of ports. The bigger your ports, the bigger your port count on these switches that need a lot of management for a lot of bandwidth, that can add up very quickly. So your switch cost goes significantly higher when you do that. So my hope is that, in the future, right, we're going to start seeing a lot of that cost come down, and that stuff managed a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I think the cloud is being pushed so heavily right now. Everything's cloud forward, and I think the only thing that's growing are the data racks in the building across the street, kind of thing, and I think the endpoints are getting smaller in size. They're getting more efficient. They're, taking up less bandwidth, all that kind of stuff. They're coming down in cost. So I think you'll see less hardware. I think there's always some portion of hardware, right? We still want displays on the wall and stuff like that, unless everybody's wearing like a headset of some sort. But I don't think we're quite there yet. But we're getting there.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think we're going to be there.
That actually leads me to an interesting question that I actually had. So, what role do you guys see cloud technology playing in AV over IP deployments, and how do you think that also affects educational institutions that are looking to scale like their digital infrastructure?
I like the cloud the most just for remote management portion of it. I think that's probably the most exciting piece to me. I ran the support team, so I was, sending student workers to run across campus as fast as possible to solve problems. Because when you lose 10 minutes of class time, that's X amount of dollars that is lost in tuition, and we have to remember, at the core, universities and colleges are run off of student tuition. That's how they stay in business. So anytime we can avoid any sort of downtime, I will say when we made the switch to more cloud-based processing and stuff like that, we had a lot more access to touch panels remotely, and we could solve problems over the phone by talking people through it rather than, sending a student to run as fast as possible and, lose 10 minutes. And if we go past, 15 minutes, then class might as well be canceled, kind of thing.
Well,
so
be careful when you say cloud-based processing, right? Because I'm with you on the remote management part, 100% on board with everything you're saying. But interestingly enough, I'm very against cloud-based processing, if you will, when it comes to like DSP infrastructure and architecture and things of that nature, because it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, which is we're still finding that we're isolating our networks in a lot of cases, right? A lot of times we're still not being able to touch the public network or the campus network. Might have to do with security, might have to do with just infrastructure requirement, whatever that may be. But there's products out there now that require a license to be activated every time it turns on, right? And so if you don't have that access, or, I mean, it's rare that the internet goes down at a whole campus, right? But let's say it does. I mean, I've had that happen in small businesses before, and then something can't activate. Now you can't use your room because the cloud's down, or whatever that might be, so there's some interesting things that are kind of there that have been there the past couple of years that we're morphing into, that we just kind of got to tread cautiously as we integrate these things into our designs and our ideology when it comes to campus standardization. So, but yeah, 100%. I mean, I can see the remote access and remote rebooting and all that stuff that's where like we have seen a huge return on everybody's investment right there. I mean, a lot of these systems will pay for themselves just when it comes to that amount of time that they're saving.
Yeah, we're taking advantage of the remote monitoring and even some remote configuration changes currently with our 10-year-old technology. I think I want to maintain that for sure. I'm not sure that sending large amounts of data to like the outside cloud makes any sense for us. Keeping it localized on our campus network is probably as far as we'll ever go.
So, what role do redundancy and failover systems play in maintaining uptime and reliability for AV over IP in some of these critical education environments?
I think it's critical for any space that is like a new building that's gone in, right? Where you're using shared resources for control, monitoring, DSP architecture and horsepower. Now we're using systems it's one unit that's the complete control system and DSP for 30 classrooms, right? And so if that one unit fails, you've got to have some redundancy. And you can get crazy with redundancy. I mean, I've got clients where we're actually doing network redundancy as well. That's a little bit more rare. It's a little bit more costly. That's more like government type stuff that we're seeing. But definitely like the main componentry, if you will, not necessarily endpoints. You can always get replacement endpoints, but if your core architecture goes down, then you got to have redundant backups. Even when it comes, I mean, not just power supplies, but units themselves. So
I think it's a great question. And I've been surprised at how unprepared a lot of manufacturers are for this question. When, a lot of these systems require one brain, one unit, control unit to control the rest of them in order to make integration much easier. When you ask about like, what about failover? It's not built into the system. And so that's something that then has to be kind of thought about and figured out. And it's also something that we don't feel confident in until we're actually already running in the classrooms and we've tested it.
I would say we already do it with power, right? Like we have redundant power in just about every space and every network closet and stuff like that in case that happens. But it doesn't always translate down to the actual hardware a lot of times, especially when you're going cloud forward and you have one core piece of technology.
I'm very surprised how many manufacturers are not thinking about this, right? Or not taking this approach. There's some out there. There definitely are. But even some of the really popular ones that we all know, they're not there yet. So
yeah, and the excuse I always hear is, well, the licensing makes it complicated, right? And that feels so weak if I'm going to be integrating it into a classroom where uptime is critical.
Yeah. So, question, which obviously I'm going to ask a question, but what are some of the most innovative uses of AV over IP that you guys have seen in education, and how did you see them impacting teaching and learning?
I'm a big fan of like medical simulation. I've used that a lot in MedSim. Just being able to take camera systems and pull them into any kind of recording software, do live talk back into actors or into the students and pull stuff down quickly for debrief in classrooms. And that's the best examples I've seen of AV over IP, where in a classroom situation you're moving stuff kind of all over a building for that purpose. I've also seen some really cool stuff in like the culinary institutes where we're using a lot of AV over IP. So that gets kind of neat when you're talking about working in cooking equipment and trying to hide equipment that's not going to die from heat and still works and is compatible with all of our other stuff. You can get pretty creative in the educational world when it comes to that kind of stuff. Experiential lobby design things are fun too. If you find a school that's got the money or a sports program that wants to do some fun stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We do a lot of experiential design, and I think that the simulation kind of falls under that. I think esports is a really cool play for it. Sending signal anywhere all the time, especially for like overflow, if you want people to watch or, be able to see what's going on. I think it's a really cool way to add to that experience outside of the standard classroom. I think there's plenty of fun in a standard classroom, but I think there's limitations too.
I'm looking forward to seeing more examples.
Fair. So you guys have kind of mentioned this already, but as we're kind of starting to wind down here, what advice would each of you offer to educational institutions looking to transition from traditional AV systems to AV over IP?
Selfishly, I would say talk to your integrator partners. I think there's some value in making sure that you're on the same page. And I think to Annie's point, we talked about maybe it's going through a general contractor, so there's no relationship at the university level, and then there's just not a connection there. And I think really it comes down to like just how many stakeholders can we get on the same page to make sure that we're all talking and communicating. And obviously there's going to be things you run into and issues that come up during the project, but how can we make sure that we mitigate those issues or address them very swiftly?
It's interesting. Like, I want the stakeholder buy-in from everybody, but I don't want too many cooks in the kitchen too, right? So, everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's opinion is the most important. So, how do we sift through that? I think that before you start developing any kind of campus standard, we do a lot of trial and error kind of test rooms, right? Where I might bring a couple different technologies to the table and let those things play with them, see how you want to do it, spend the time and do the research before you ultimately go down a rabbit hole that you regret 6 months down the road.
Yeah, I agree. Spend the time.
So one of my last questions also, and this is something that you guys have brought up, but just again, as we're winding down, kind of like final thoughts, how do you see AV over IP technology evolving in the next 5 years? And what innovations in particular do you foresee impacting the education sector?
I think I just see more use of in-room peripherals to user devices in a variety of ways. My ideal presentation would be bringing my phone and plugging it in and having everything be able to run off of my phone, a small device that fits in my pocket. And I think that AV over IP is the most ready, staged to accomplish that.
Yeah,
I would agree. The technology will go, right? I mean, It's going to get better in that kind of realm.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I always heard from faculty and like, I want to walk in, open my laptop, and that's it. I want to be done. And I'm like, that's great. I would love that too.
Well, if you can get their buy-in to actually understand how that works and what they need to do to make that work, I mean, we can only simplify it so much, right?
So much, but they're like, no, I just want it to work. Can't it just work? It just
goes, yeah.
That is a beautiful thought. That is a beautiful thought. Maybe one day that will be something that actually exists. Do you see any innovations? I mean, kind of not so much 5 years, but maybe 6 months. Do you see anything big in terms of technology that might change the game? Or is it just kind of like inching along, slowly becoming more into, the greater vernacular and like becoming more user friendly?
I'm seeing improvements on what we got, not so much, earth shattering new stuff.
Right.
I'd love to see that, but I just haven't seen that recently.
Yeah, I would say that too. I think AI is like the big buzzword of every conversation, and it's like, is it being is it being used at a university level? How do they want to approach it? Are they trying to not cheat, or are they trying to embrace it? And, it's already in the cameras that we install in the classroom and stuff like that. So how can we convince people that they want to use it more, or use it to their advantage as a tool rather than a bad force?
All right. So my last question for all of you is going to be, what are your final thoughts? What is the one thing you want an audience member who is watching this to take from this conversation? Annie, why don't you start us off?
Spend the time and do your research and maximize the benefits.
Jimmy, what about you?
I would say partnerships, like develop as many partnerships with the people you need to work with as possible. Whether it's people installing it or the manufacturers, friends from other institutions that have done it successfully, talk with them and figure out, what pain they went through and how can you avoid some of that pain? Because there's a lot of great resources out there available.
Jeremy, what about you?
This entire past hour.
just watch it. Just
everything we touched on is critical to any kind of implementation of AV over IP. But if there's one thing to take away to not duplicate any of what the previous people said, it's coordinate and communicate with end users and IT.
That's beautiful advice. And my actual final question for each of you is, I'm going to go around and ask each of you, where can they contact you or your company's places of business? Annie, why don't you start?
I can be found on LinkedIn at Annie Foster, as in A-N and the body part, me, Foster. Community.hetma.org. You mentioned HETMA earlier. Thank you for the shout out. Or on X at in_a_skirt.
Perfect. Jimmy, what about you?
I'm on LinkedIn, just Jimmy Singleton, just my name. And then you can always email me at jimmy.singleton@avispl.com, or you can reach out to any of your AVISPL reps, and they're glad to connect you.
Perfect. Jeremy?
Jeremy.caldera@pearltechnology.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. And yes, for all of you watching, you can scroll down to the headshots of all of our presenters here. And if you click on their name, it will take you directly to their LinkedIn pages. So we made it nice and easy for you to connect with these guys. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this panel. I had such a good time getting to pick each of your brains. And thank you for teaching me and our audience a lot about AV over IP and education. I had a good time.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Megan Dutta. Hi.
Hey, Steph. That was a fantastic panel.
Thank you. I had actually a really good time learning about how AV over IP can and should be leveraged in educational institutions. And, sometimes it shouldn't. Here's all it takes to get that working. Yeah, I learned a lot. And I think that our audience did as well.
Yeah, it was a great way to kick off Launch Week 10.
I know. We've already made it an hour and a half through. Can you believe it?
Woo!
That was so woo.
It's Monday.
By the way, throughout the rest of this week, by the end of Thursday, like nothing that's coming out of our mouths is going to be like normal.
I hope everyone is watching the social promos, and maybe we'll play the blooper reel at some point during this week when we pre-recorded some intros, because we have a lot of fun behind the scenes.
We do have a lot of fun behind the scenes. Like, these could be so boring and dry, but like, thankfully you guys have two very funny and interesting people to talk
According to us.
According to us. Like, no, everyone's going to comment and they're going to be like, you guys are actually so boring and weird. We hate you. So, Megan, tell me again, what do we have to look forward to for the rest of today?
Yeah, so you're going to see my face twice in a row. Super exciting. First, we have Stephanie and Vinny coming up, and we are going to talk about AI and EDU, which I'm super excited about. As I mentioned earlier, we're having an AI conversation each day this week because it's become such an important part of the industry. And then we're going to have our EdTech update, and then we're going to talk meeting equity in hybrid environments, and that's going to be with Gary Kay. So it's going to be an awesome day. I think we're ready to bring on Stephanie and Vinny, so let's pop them up.
All right. Sounds
good. Hi, Steph. Hi, guys.
Hey
It's
guys.
so good to see you. Vinny, can you do just a quick intro about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm the Solutions Engineering and Design Architect at USC. I design learning environment products and systems. And the major thing that I do is I get feedback, input from faculty and students, and then come up with the ideas to solve their problems.
Awesome. Stephanie, what about you?
Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie Crawford. I am the Executive Director for Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. So we are a nonprofit for people in any role in education. So I get kind of a different view because we hear from the teachers using the products in their classrooms. We work with the administrators and even, you know, the tech directors, the CTOs, all of that too. So we have kind of a unique bird's eye view of the roles.
Yeah, I don't know if you were listening earlier when we were having our little intro session, we talked a lot about IDEA and how fond we are of you guys and how excited we are about IdeaCon.
I love it. Thank you so much. You know, we're huge fans of you guys. So I don't think I've missed a launch week in several years now.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are great to work with. We're so excited to have both of you here. So we only have 10 minutes, so let's jump right into it. The first question, how are AI solutions being used to personalize learning experiences? And one of the things I like about the two of you is Vinny has more of a higher ed overview and Stephanie has the K through 12. So Stephanie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I find myself in a unique situation right now anyway, because I was contacted by a school at the end of last school year, and they were experiencing a teacher shortage, and they asked me if I would come in and consider teaching one class period every morning for this school year on top of my director job. And of course I said yes, because why not? So I am getting to see firsthand how some of those EdTech tools that have been created around AI, not just as because I feel like that's kind of what we see sometimes is that in response to AI, 1,000 new tools popped up and they're all wanting the marketplace, right? But they're all not created equal, from privacy concerns to actually what they do. You know, it is really something that we have to look at what it's being given to us as educators, and then how is it benefiting the student. So what I see for being able to personalize learning right now there are some tools that actually let you, at the click of a button, take a reading passage, take a topic, create a reading passage, take a YouTube video, and it will look at its transcripts and create a reading passage. You can mark that reading level from 2nd grade to 12th grade. You can, you know, add your own vocab, but it will come in with those vocab for you. It will come up with standards tied questions. It's a really powerful tool, and you can put it in. I have several students whose primary language at home is not English, and there are tools that will allow you to, again, with a click of a button, put that in another language. So for me, what I'm seeing is the power of these AI tools for really giving personalized learning is finding the right tool, first of all. I always say free isn't best when it comes to these AI tools. You know, you are paying for something. And often when you go with the free, it's the hidden, you're training it. We have to be very careful with any kind of student data we're putting in. So, but personalized learning, the chances to actually on the spot, instead of me having to go through and research something for, you know, a week ahead of time to prepare a passage, I can take 10 minutes if our discussion changes in class, and now all of a sudden I have something that is research-based because I have you know, a tool that will pull the sources with it and all of that, and I'm addressing their student needs. So it's kind of a long-winded answer there, Megan, sorry.
No, I love details. What about you, Vinny?
There's a lot of things in AI that can be used to personalize the education environment and the learning experience for the students. One of the biggest ones that I look at is the natural language processing system. The NLP itself it's basically what it does is it helps every student or faculty ask the question differently, right? So me talking in my language, in my accent, in my way of speaking is different from anybody else's, right? So if I ask a question, we want the system to understand, and NLP is very useful. Especially at USC, we have about, I would say 75% students are international. So NLP definitely helps. So we have implemented that into our interaction of students and faculty with the AI in every instance, right? Also, intelligent tutoring systems. Students, they come in, they want to learn one topic, and our AI is able to give them other topics which are kind of connected to those topics. If they want to learn in depth about that topic, they can go back and keep going, kind of keep drilling down, if I may, right, on that topic and keep learning more and more. Also, future, I feel, is definitely we are looking into AR, VR technologies. What we are thinking is for students to have access to AR, VR equipment where they can go and really see the for example, if you are electrical or mechanical engineer, you can go and look at the machinery from the inside. There's a lot of applications available which will give you that augmented reality where you are looking inside the machinery without going to the machine shop or without going to the industry itself, right? So a lot of new technology AI is bringing that we are trying to implement at USC.
So we talked, about personalization, and we've talked a little bit about students, but one of the other parts of this is AI can also help teachers and educators. What role does AI currently play in supporting teachers and educators, and how do you think that will change in the next few years?
I think right now, one of the things that it can really do for school administrators in particular is take some of those more mundane tasks that take a lot of time to complete, but that don't take a lot of specialized skill to do, and help you get those done in a more timely fashion. So there are tools out there that are specifically made for schools that will allow you to put in the tone of an email that you want, the basic idea of what you are wanting to convey to a parent, and then help you with that email. And again, I always say it's the tools created for schools that I try to look at for my educators, because there are so many privacy issues when it comes to K-12 education, especially those student data privacy laws with Illinois. I mean, it's pretty strict. So when you think about what tool you have to use, I go to ChatGPT on my own, but I also want to make sure that people know, the teachers know, administrators know, ChatGPT really shouldn't be your first go-to when you are looking at putting in information for schools. So like what school tool will you use that was created for education? But I think a lot of productivity tasks are helped by AI right now for educators.
Awesome. So same thing. I agree with Stephanie. What we are trying to do here is trying to provide the experience to faculty based on the bottlenecks or hiccups they have seen in the past. So the biggest solution that we applied, I would say, would be the intelligent director. It's kind of a part of the Zoom room, which allows for the cameras to automatically adjust to provide the best viewing angle. So when the professor moves, we are able to move the camera based on their location in the classroom. So for the remote students who are watching this remotely, it's very easy for them to follow along. Active speaker, again, could be a student talking, could be a teacher talking. For the remote people, it's very difficult for them to follow. So we have applied that resource also. The summaries that we apply at the end of the classroom or at the end of the class or the meeting, what it does is we can summarize the whole class. If a student misses something, they are able to go back and read the summary. Or even the transcripts are available through our Zoom rooms as well. So not just for the students, it's also for the faculty, because now they don't have to repeat the class. They don't have to have a kind of provide the environment for students to come back and learn again from once they deliver one topic one time, right? Another thing I want to bring up is noise reduction. The noise reduction inside a classroom environment is very important. And it's different in each classroom environment. So wherever you place your system, it's going to be a different environment. So we have implemented a lot of algorithm, which allows us to reduce the noise based on where they're at. So that's really helpful. Last thing is the real-time translation. So like I said, USC has about 75% students that are international. For students and for teachers, faculty to understand each other, we have applied this real-time translation where they can, if they're doing a Zoom room session, they can translate the language and they can understand each other.
Okay, we have time for one more question. And Stephanie, you kind of touched on this a little bit. How do you address concerns about data privacy and security when implementing AI, especially because, as you mentioned, you have all of that sensitive student information?
Yeah, for us, when we look at, again, a school building and what EdTech tools you're using, we have to be, first of all, if you're going to use something that a student signs into, it has to be approved. They have to have a contract. It has to follow the SAPA rule or SAPA laws. It is an intense process, and so it's not easy to be a student used AI tool in a K-12 system right now. The EdTech companies that have done that have signed those agreements, you can trust your students to be going in. For instance, Skillstruck has an AI platform that is for students as well, and they can go in, and it's like ChatGPT in a way. So it allows, Vinny was talking about how their students could go and have some AI generated topics that might be of interest to them as well. Well, that's harder in K-12 districts, but this tool allows that to happen because it has that agreement. And then for teachers and administrators, one of the biggest things for us to help get across to them is you cannot put sensitive student data out there regardless of what agreement is signed. So if you are working on having a tool help write an IEP for you, great use of the AI tool, right? But you can't put a student's name in there. There can't be identifying information. And sometimes as adults, we don't think of that. It's not that we're trying to put anything out there, but we're like, we've got this tool, it generates it on its own. So it's the reminder of there is data that no matter what, you have to not put it in a tool that is going to save it and use it. So it's being more general in what you put in instead of specific to a person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Vinny, what about you?
Quickly adding to what Stephanie said, I completely agree with her. First thing, what I feel or what we implement is starting with only the necessary data. Do not capture anything that is unnecessary. So we have a policy where we do not capture anything that is beyond what is absolutely needed, right? Second is data encryption. Anything you store, there has to be encryption on top of that. And auditing that encryption on a monthly basis or quarterly basis is very important. Again, compliance with all the regulations, FERPA, HEPA, GDPR, CCPA, all those regulatory compliance have to be there. So our policies, they actually do encompass all the regulatory compliances. Also, we have our own policy implemented where we do not capture unnecessary data, and that's how we kind of give them a comprehensive privacy and security. Audit is a big deal, I would say. Auditing your own policy every quarter, because technology is changing every minute, right? So you have to be up in front of everybody else and make sure that you are keeping everybody's privacy private.
I feel like I just want to clap for Vinny right now. Like, yes, put a point on that, the auditing part of that. That was a great point, Vinny.
Thank you.
Are there any last points you would like to make before we head out?
I would just like to say that I think that AI is clearly it's not going anywhere. I embrace it myself. I use it, but I do think that it's important for us, especially in education, not to get into we're going to use it for everything without also checking the ethical implications that go along with tools that you use and how you're using it. To always remember the bias that those tools have. You can't go in blind and just assume that everything is perfect because it's an AI tool. So it's just the reminder, it's always that discussion about ethics and bias and equity in those AI tools.
Yep, love it. Also, I want to add that technology should be applied to problems, not just that we have technology, we shove it down the throats of the faculty and students. I think we have to make sure there has to be some problem that we are solving with the technology. So I think the feasibility studies are needed, and also the market problem, the problems that students and teachers are having, we should capture those first and then try to align the technology to solve those problems.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I know this was a very short conversation, but it was very interesting. And if people want to find you and learn more and continue these conversations with you, where can they find you? And Vinny, we'll start with you.
LinkedIn, Vinny Sabharwal, VINNY SABHARWAL. Yeah, at USC also. You guys can reach out to at USC.
You can find us at ideaillinois.org, or you can contact me directly at scrawford, CRAWFORD, at ideaillinois.org. And I'm also on LinkedIn. It's important, though, that you know that my name is Stephanie with an F, not Stephanie with a PH, or you won't find me.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And I look forward to chatting with you more offline about this because this is so interesting. And now we're going to bring on our next panel. We're going to be talking EdTech updates. So we're just going to talk all things general education technology. So let's bring on Troy and George. Hi, guys.
Good afternoon.
Thank you both so much for joining me today. George, let's start with you. Can you do a little introduction about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is George Shako. I'm the Senior Director for Classroom and Academic Technologies here at Pace University. We are an amazing multi-campus university with campuses on New York City as well as in Westchester, and we have a law school in Westchester as well. That's my 9-to-5 hat. I am also the immediate past president of ETC and the co-founder and president of Next Level, a nonprofit organization catered towards diversifying and youthifying AV.
I love that. Troy, what about you?
Troy Powers. I lead the support team at Northwestern University, the central IT support team. I'm also the 2-year executive director at large for the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. Been in AV for, about 11, 12 years now. And I was an electrician before this, so very familiar with, kind of the installation and that side of things, as well as the support side, which I'm doing now.
Thank you both for joining me. And I want to give a quick shout out to Lex because she actually recommended both of you for this panel. So we have, we love HETMA. They're always helping us find speakers and quality speakers I'm excited about today. Let's jump right in. How have recent Pro AV advancements in EdTech transformed the learning experience for students in both higher ed and K-12?
Well, I think speaking for higher ed specifically, I think lecture capture has been a great advantage for us. I think it creates a lot of equity. Northwestern has a large population of international students. About maybe a third of our students are international. So that language barrier, can be difficult to follow in class. So having that, recording to fall back on has been very beneficial. And I think just for everybody, right? It can be hard to follow. It's easy to get distracted. Whatever it is that happens. Maybe you understand most things, but you had trouble with this one part. Being able to kind of go back and follow up has been really advantageous. So,
I'd like to say I want to talk about it from a larger perspective. Post-pandemic, I think we're seeing quite a bit of boom. A lot of this stuff has been here for a long time, but we are now looking at some of these already existing tech booming, right? So AR, VR stuff. So we have a lot of interactive technology here at Pace and other universities around us. But some of the ones that I really like is our School of Nursing, our College of Health Professions has and I'm going to butcher the name, but an anatomage table. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. But basically, it's a 55-inch interactive TV that the students can go stand around, and they have a cadaver or whatever it is that was donated by the medical school, and they could zoom in and say, oh, this capillary burst or this bone is broken here, and so on and so forth. Wonderful, right? Amazing to see that. Our School of Education has the immersion software, which is you go in front of a TV and you are teaching to a virtual classroom. The students are reacting. I've seen, students dozing off, throwing spitballs at each other during a session. It's really cool to see. So we have all these tools and these experiences that have been in existence, but are really booming. Another thing I'm seeing is collaboration tools, right? People using something as simple as OneDrive or Google Drive or just using, Teams chat or Zoom chat or Slack chat. I think Slack's still around. I'm not sure. But all these things are really, really good to see.
That's exciting. I'd love to hear more about that sometime. So one of the things that has been growing since the pandemic is hybrid learning models. In your opinion, what are the most important considerations so that you ensure equitable access to technology and resources for all students?
I can start on this one, Troy, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Me personally, and what I'm seeing around this whole hybrid model learning is fading, right? I think there is quite a push to come back to the classroom. Now, there is a version, of flavor of hybrid learning, which is, hey, I'm sick, I'm not feeling well. Believe it or not, COVID is still around, right? So, hey, can I dial into class today? Or I have a guest speaker, or so on and so forth. Or we have a completely online class that meets once a month on Zoom and catches up. So there are wonderful benefits of the high flex learning. And if we're talking about you know how to make it equitable, I think it's important to think about accessibility. I think that's the most important part of this, whether it's just as simple as closed captioning, or Zoom has the AI companion tool, which is a wonderful tool. I live by it. But I think training for the faculty or the students, whoever is running it, is critical. That's something you'll hear me say quite a bit today and everywhere, is training, and some more training, even when nobody shows up. Offer it anyway.
I would mirror what George is saying about training, but also simplicity. Like that's what kind of our focus is, to limit the number of interactions the faculty have to make with the system to make it work and do what they want it to do. Limit how the number of cables they need to plug into their machine, the number of clicks they need to make to get cameras working, etc. Northwestern is kind of officially an in-person only. Like we've never really embraced that hybrid kind of learning aspect outside of when we weren't allowed in the classrooms. That being said, I think like George was saying, accessibility. So I mean, things like microphones can pick up the audience. Whether that's something like a catchbox system that you're throwing around, kind of improving engagement there, or any of the many different versions of ceiling microphones out there that you could use. So capturing the audio of the classroom to make sure you catch all of that engagement is really probably the most important thing. It would be nice to be able to see those people as well, right? Having multiple camera views. So I think those are kind of two components of hybrid that are really important, that maybe were a little bit overlooked. I think when we were first gearing up, and equipping extra rooms for hybrid, because of the pandemic, the default was to put that camera in the back of the room to see the faculty member, which, I mean, that's great for like lecture capture and things like that, but that's not an engaged classroom, right? It maybe would have been better to have it the other way, or maybe catch a side view or something so you could see both. But yeah, I think those are the two kind of key components, is audio, being able to pick up the audience engagement, audio and video.
So you made an interesting point about being in person only until you had to not be. How are things now? Like, how did you upgrade things, and do you still use the technology, or is it just kind of sitting there?
So I mean, like I said in the first question, lecture capture is really where our focus was, and then really in terms of when we're designing, upgrades to the classrooms, like that's where our focus has been. So we have a lot of essentially all but maybe 15 classrooms now are equipped with that camera in the back of the classroom to try to catch the faculty at the front of the classroom. A large portion have ceiling microphones, and that's kind of the model we're moving towards. It avoids having to deal with batteries, and it's just easier for the faculty. They don't have to put anything on. And they're picking up audio so well now. It's not as good as a lavalier. It's not as good as talking to a handheld, but it's good enough that I'm okay with it, and so is everybody else. Especially with the added advantages of audience engagement, and not having to deal with batteries, not having to deal with mic placement, which is always a nightmare with faculty. So I think that's really like I said, that's been our focus, is lecture capture. And Zoom, like George was saying, bringing people in when they're sick, bringing in a guest speaker. That's really how it's been mostly utilized in terms of hybrid outside, not in the classroom because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I can add to that a little bit. Slightly different dimension. I said we're a multi-campus institution, so we've had a flavor of the web learning, really, but not really. We used to have the Cisco MX. I don't know if I'm allowed to use model numbers, but we had some Cisco devices that we would have, and we would have our New York City campus, and we would have our Pleasantville campus, and then the teacher would teach between the campuses. Once we moved into this HyFlex hybrid style of learning, we started converting all our classrooms into, let's put a camera in the back of the room. Let's put a ceiling tile microphone. Let's capture this. So essentially, we moved away from the VC room model, and essentially every single one of our classrooms is Zoom enabled. We also use Zoom to capture our lectures. I just found a different way to say lecture capture than Troy. But basically, we use Panopto as our video repository, and we have our Zoom room set up in every single classroom. Professor goes in, hits record. All the content is recorded through Zoom, automatically uploaded to Panopto, and then it is put into their Brightspace LMS shell. All done automatically. Well, automatically to the professor, right? The legwork is done by us, but nobody needs to know. And that's how we're using the tech right now. So while we have that HyFlex flavor, which is readily available in this, and it's important to think, and I think, Troy, you touched on this a little bit, it's important that we use these ceiling tile microphones to capture the student interaction, even in a lecture capture, not just in a hybrid HyFlex situation, right? So if a student's asking a question, that is recorded and stored on the Panopto servers. And now what we've essentially done is we've, it's the old term, flipped the classroom. So basically the classroom has become, and we have a couple of faculty members that are doing this, where you come to the classroom and you're not taking notes. It's just a straight lecture. And the students then go back and they can view the recording and they can take their notes. They can make bookmarks. They can post their questions on the lecture capture software, and this faculty member can interact with them in that sense. And it's really just making effective use of class time and office time and all that kind of stuff.
So you talked a little bit about upgrades, and I want to kind of dig into that a little bit more. What challenges do schools and universities face when you're doing a large-scale technology upgrade, and how can you effectively overcome these barriers? And I know probably the number one answer we're going to hear is budget, but I'll let you guys get into that.
I mean, like you said, budget, but also time, right? It takes a lot. I mean, it kind of comes down to changing technology on a campus on a large scale, right? I either have to change it all at once, right, which brings problems like now my staff training for the new tech. Where do I have the time to do that? But it maintains that consistent product, that consistent environment for the faculty, which is very important to me. Doing it piecemeal, right? That gives me the time to kind of maybe ease into it, right? But now I have to train my staff on the current tech and the new tech, like kind of at the same time. So that's an additional kind of concern. But I lose that consistency for the faculty, right? So there's a big problem there. There isn't really a great answer because like when do you have, like, we'll never have the time to kind of or the money to really try to spend that, to do that wholesale change without some pretty serious changes to the way that we kind of have been refreshing classrooms for a long time, which is, this classroom gets changed over every 5 years, right? I don't know what a good answer is really. I mean, because without more money or more time, I mean, you can kind of overcome any of those problems with more of one of those two things, but they're finite resources. So you really kind of run into some problems. Which one do you have more of? And that's kind of the route you need to go.
Yeah, and I can add, two of my biggest hurdles. One or both of them are going to get me in trouble for saying it out loud, but old infrastructure, old buildings, old doors, windows, believe it or not, that all plays a part in this. Old whiteboards, slate whiteboards, all play a part in this, right? And the next one is resistance to change. I could bring in the latest and greatest tech in the classrooms, and there is either some fear to use it, some I've been told that some of the tech and that's in our classrooms are quote unquote threatening. That is intense, but that resistance to change is a big factor. No matter how much we train, no matter how much, the one thing we've noticed is we do trainings 2 weeks before the semester starts. We're trying to figure out what's that sweet spot, right? Because everyone's gone throughout the summer, and when they come back, lo and behold, every year it's like we're starting new, right? So we said, you know what, the 2-week point is probably a good time. Most people are back, and then we realized we do the training 2 weeks, then semester starts, and the first 2 weeks of the semester, everyone's so engaged in getting the class off the ground and situated, and people dropping and adding classes, so on and so forth, that everything is forgotten, and we got to go through all that stuff again, and we're meeting with them again and again. So it's really, there is no sweet spot. So we do a lot of online training, and we have had a great turnout. We do it throughout the semester. Here's a set time, open office hours, show up, we'll help you individually, whatever it is. We use Zoom for all that. Breakout rooms are fantastic. We host 2 events before the start of the semester. We use Zoom events again. I keep using the name of companies. I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to.
Feel free.
In that case, we're a big Zoom shop. No, I'm kidding. And we have a lot of folks that do attend. So we've had record number of folks show up these past 2 years for these training sessions, and it's been wonderful. But again, old buildings, you still got to fight that battle.
So time, money, training. To sum that up. So I don't know if you watched the last section. We talked a little bit about this, about student privacy concerns. That's becoming a growing issue. As you're doing these technology updates, what role do data privacy and cybersecurity play in EdTech, and how are you protecting student information with your AV equipment?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a very serious concern, especially with, FERPA changes. And I think, it's really ambiguous right now because there hasn't really been a great challenge to FERPA to kind of suggest this is where, we really, there's no hard limit, right? So I think a lot of different schools are kind of making it up as they go along. Northwestern, I think being a private school has a little bit more, wiggle room than like in my previous world at a public institution, but it's still it's tough, right? And especially when you get into things like the medical schools, it becomes an even murkier kind of subject. The way we've kind of gotten around it is you implied becoming a student at Northwestern, you've given us implied consent to record audio and video of you. So there's nothing more about it. Like, we can record, we maintain the recordings for a specified amount of time, depending on what the recording is. And they're not shared out publicly. They're held privately, only available to people in the classes and for other pretty specific reasons. But yeah, you can be recorded in any way as a student at Northwestern for pretty much whatever reason, as long as you're on campus.
Yeah, I mean, do your best to follow the FERPA, HIPAA, all those acronyms, whatever they stand for. Make sure you follow them tightly. Partner with companies that prioritize security and have strict policies, clear policies. But really, and internally, make sure your passwords for even your cameras are not admin. Come on, we know we all have at least one unit somewhere that's admin, right? Hopefully my ISO is not on this call. But, for me, I'm going to put my faculty hat on for a quick second. I also teach some courses here at PACE, and every October, because it is October, Cybersecurity Month, I do this little spiel on cybersecurity. And it's really funny to see how many kids, when I go through the list of top 10 passwords, and every semester, without fail, I have at least one student that tells me, Well, I got to go back to my dorm and change my password. It's on the top 10 list. And, you know, just all these little things, that information, getting that information out there, letting them know, as much as you'd love to, you are not the last known relative of the king of Ethiopia. Just don't click on that link. Just that kind of information, getting that out there and getting that awareness out there. You know, if something looks suspicious, send it to your ISO office to get that information. Look at who the sender is, right? Get that kind of information. I think it's very important to get that information across.
I don't know if it was this month, it might have been last month, we got a little article about the top 10 most hacked passwords. So we're going to drop that in the chat. And the number one is password. You know, so make sure to check that out. And one of the points you brought up is going to lead me into the next question. You said, you know, you partner with these manufacturers and make sure that they're up to date on things. So what role do partnerships between educational institutions and technology providers, whether it's a manufacturer, an integrator, consultant, what do they play in driving innovation in the EdTech space? And how can you optimize these collaborations?
Sure. I mean, I'm very old school, and I believe in my partnerships. I need to talk to people. I can't just, you know, read up some informationals. Is that what it's called? Those little brochures that come on the internet and figure out what I need. I like to meet people. I get to hear what they think. I'm a part of Educational Technology Collaborative, which is a wonderful platform of other institutions. HETMA is another resource, and just hearing from people and connecting with people. But you know, I don't want to pick one camera or one. I'm trying so hard not to use names. One camera or one DSP and put it in there. I like to know what everyone does. So the partnerships to me are very important for R&D, right? And I mentioned ETC, using best practices from other schools. How did they implement something? How did they? What are the speed bumps challenges that they face? How do they overcome it? So those partnerships are extremely critical to our day-to-day and larger projects as well.
Yeah, I think, like George said, relationships are probably the key to it all, right? And being able to, you know, call those people up on the phone and say, "Hey, I have this problem. Nothing you're making so far fixes it. What can we do?" And being able to have those conversations and kind of drive that innovation is very important. I think you know, people in the EdTech space are kind of uniquely positioned to be a better support for manufacturers in that kind of innovative space, because we kind of own the technology from its inception to its, you know, completion, right? We're designing it. Oftentimes we're programming it, we're supporting it throughout its life, and there's not really another vertical that can say that. So we have a unique kind of outlook on the products and can kind of provide feedback that nobody else really can. So that's why partnerships, I think, with higher ed and our manufacturers are so advantageous to both, because like I said, I can make those phone calls. I can work with those manufacturers to develop the products that I need and make them fit the needs that I have. But they're getting valuable feedback about the product from, like I said, from inception to completion, essentially.
Yeah, it truly is a partnership. It's not just one way, which I like. I have one more question for you before we get to the audience question. What are some emerging trends that you're seeing in EdTech, and which ones do you see having the most significant long-term impact on curriculum development and personalized learning?
That's a loaded question. Do we have another hour for this session? AI, right? I think that's the most obvious answer. AI, and more AI, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's whatever it is, right? To me, we talked a lot about lecture capture, right? So we use, our faculty use the heat map that is provided in the lecture capture to see where the students are struggling. Oh, I need to spend more time on this portion of the lecture versus this one seems to be much easier for the students. So a lot of that information, and it's beyond AI cameras and, you know, directional microphones. I think it's everything that encompasses AI that'll be a part of the future. Gamification is a big deal, putting that into syllabus, right? Anything as simple as Kahoot can change the setting in a classroom from I'm falling asleep to, oh, that's kind of cool. And you know, AR, VR, I still believe that that's where the future of higher ed is that hands-on experiential learning, being able to see. I was at Apple HQ checking out their the VR glasses that Apple has, and God, that was beautiful. Went into a engine and you're moving around, and it was amazing to watch. So to me, those three things are the future.
Yeah, I mean, really kind of mirror what George is saying. I think AI and XR is kind of really where a lot of it is headed. You know, we're Northwestern's really old school. We have a lot of really old collections of artifacts that are, you know, one of a kind. I've got a team here that's doing a lot of great stuff with like photogrammetry. So like digitizing these objects, making them available online for students, you know, not just at Northwestern, but all over, to be able to kind of access and put hands on. And that's something that really, like, you never would have been able to do otherwise, you know, like, because access to these, you know, they're very old and rare, et cetera. So access is very restricted. So I think that's a kind of a really interesting way to kind of open things up. I think in addition to that, you know, like as George was saying with AI, there's just there's so much opportunity out there for you know, for continued learning in that space.
Let's dive into some audience questions. First, do you see a correlation between academic achievement and the cost of the technology deployed?
I don't know enough about the academic achievement, I'd say, side of things. I think that's difficult to say. Being at Northwestern, you know, it's the students that come here are generally high performing students. So academic achievement is typically on the higher side. So I might not have the best answer to a question like that.
I think there is some correlation. I think there is some connection. I think there is something to be said for it. If I'm sitting in a classroom, and I mean, just imagine if you're in my classroom and I'm teaching a 3-hour lecture and you're staring on the back of his head for 3 hours, that's going to get boring very fast, right? So I think using tech, even if it's, hopefully it's not death by PowerPoint, but if you're using some sort of tech, whether it's Kahoot or whether it's just doing some kind of experiential learning, I think it's critical. But even, again, I'm going to go back to lecture capture because both Troy and I talked about it in great detail, right? When you take away the note taking from the class, when you're sitting there, you're taking notes, you're missing half the class, right? Because you can't, there's no way a student can take notes as fast as I speak or somebody else speaks, right? Especially if you're from New York. But if I'm sitting there listening to the conversation and the class period is 2 hours of open conversation, and then I can go back and I can watch the recording and I can take my notes on my own time, make little bookmarks and say, hey, I have a question about this. I have a question about this. This one didn't make sense. And again, you know, the data analytics, the professor can go in there and take a look. The 15 minutes into the presentation, the students were stuck and they kept going back and looking at it over and over and over again. Maybe I need to spend some more time on this. That kind of information is so critical. That all comes from technology. I think it does indeed play a part in that academic excellence.
So one of the parts of the question that I don't think we necessarily answered, because I think you could interpret it two ways, does the cost of the technology deployed correlate? So does that maybe, like, I think they're asking, like, if you're using really expensive technology versus like your low end example PowerPoint or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to quantify that, but I think as long as you're using some flavor of it, I think, you know, like, for example, we could use Poll Everywhere, which is a paid tool, versus you can use Mentimeter, which is a free tool. So there's options either way you go. So there's no real way for me to quantify. Troy, I don't know.
I think kind of to answer that question and maybe avoid it a little bit, I'd say content is kind of the key there, right? Because bad content on expensive equipment doesn't, it's still bad content, right? So I think, and I think that's kind of a problem too, is that us AV folks are not interacting, like we're not interacting with maybe that instructional design side as much as we should to kind of drive that problem, right? I keep hearing manufacturers push things like 8K or I don't even want 4K in my classroom because most of the faculty are still designing 4:3 slides, right? Yeah. So that's a big problem, and I think content is kind of where some of that focus needs to be.
We have time for one more question really quickly. What is your budget cycle and how do you determine what gets refreshed?
So we have we refresh our refresh cycles every 5 years for tech. Sometimes it feels like it should be much shorter than that, but it's not realistic. Our refresh cycle is every 5 years, and we do it in the summer typically.
So likewise in the summer, we've actually, since COVID and the supply chain problems, we've actually kind of gone a different way, and we're starting to replace gear wholesale as opposed to refreshing classrooms. So, for example, this past summer, we replaced all of our control processors, our matrix switchers, and our touch panels. It's a little bit tedious. There's lots of kind of problems that kind of come with doing it that way as opposed to wholesale refreshes, and the podiums get a little bit more cluttered, but we're able to leverage our buying power a lot more, right? If I'm buying 150 of a thing, I'm able to get each of them at a much lower price point. So that's nice.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you both so much for joining me today. If people want to connect with you or learn more about you, where can they find you? Troy, we'll start with you.
So yeah, LinkedIn, the HETMA community website, hetma.org. My email is troy.powers@northwestern.edu.
And George, what about you?
Sure. On LinkedIn, George-Chaco-CTS, because there's a lot of George Chacos out there. And you can find me on thenextlvl.org. That's our nonprofit organization to youthify and diversify AV.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you later. And now we're going to bring on Gary Kay for his next session. Gary, can you try talking? Gary, we can't hear you. Nope. Yay. We love that we're live and it's proving it, as you can see. So we're going to work on getting Gary's sound on. And as soon as we have that, he's actually going to be joined by Carl. And they are going to talk about meeting equity in hybrid environments. So yeah, let's bring Carl on and he can introduce himself. Hey, Carl.
Hey there, how you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. Before Gary gets here, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what AVER does if they don't know?
All right, no worries, no worries. My name is Carl Harvell. I am the Director of Product for AVER in the Enterprise USB division for the US. So over here at AVER, we've been in the video conferencing industry for a long time now. We've been going from making H.323 to SIP-based codecs back in the day to now we've been making a lot of USB peripherals that have been working great with Microsoft Teams and Zoom and others. So yeah, we've been pretty popular lately, especially with enterprise customers, but also within the EDU market and higher learning. So
I'm excited to hear more about that. Let's bring Gary on so you guys can chat away. Hey, Gary.
I had to switch microphones, Carl. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, good. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but I had to switch mics. My mic locked up right as I went live. But in any case, I'm excited about this session because Carl and I have done some sessions before that have become very, very popular in the tens of thousands of views after doing our sessions together. So for some reason, we have some decent chemistry there, Carl. But it's really kind of cool because you're kind of like, you know, a little bit about everything in video conferencing. So it's really fun to talk to you. So I appreciate you being on here. I don't know if you had a chance to introduce yourself when I rebooted real quick, but you're the U.S. Director of Product for Enterprise Division of Aver Information, and Aver has exploded with literally 10 years ago. The only thing I knew Aver for was this little adapter I had for my laptop that allowed me to ingest video into my laptop. And now you have all sorts of really cool products. And you're the leader, I would argue, the leader in PTZ cameras, especially in higher education. I see more Aver cameras out there than any other. So congratulations on the work that you've done.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, no, I've been in the industry for a long time, kind of grew up in the industry, going off for over 26 years now. So yeah, it's been very interesting to see how the whole industry has evolved and changed and where it's going.
It is crazy how fast you guys have done what you've done. And I think you're a big part of it because people like the way that you engage with them and teach them about products. And I'm going to actually have you go back in history a little bit, because back when I first got in the industry, video conferencing was talked about like crazy, and everybody was talking about how exciting the future of video conferencing was. But, honestly, it didn't work really well. I remember a guy by the name of Scott Scherer, who was a really good friend of mine, who knew as much about who knew as much about video conferences as anybody I know. And he had a really good point. He's like, it's not the hardware companies that are having the problem out there. It's the phone companies that can't provide solid ISDN lines and T1 lines to make video conferencing happen. So I'd love for you to go back and kind of talk about what happened and what fixed all of that.
Yeah, no, it's been a great progression because back in the days, video conferencing was really only in like the corporate boardrooms, and usually it was just the higher ups that really wanted to figure out whether somebody on the far end was actually honest or not, because they wanted to be able to see their facial expressions, be able to determine and be able to call them out if they thought they were lying to them. But now it's progressed on, and like you were saying, going over from the ISDN line days to every video call probably costs a couple of $100 in long distance lines. And then it slowly transitioned over to the H.323 and SIP-based devices that were out there. And that's when Polycom and others,
Cisco
Life Science and others, they were kind of dominating the market back then. And it was great because it brought video conferencing down, from the boardroom down to the large, conference rooms or medium-sized rooms within campuses. But now we start seeing a slow progression to another era that came in, which was cloud computing, and people started moving over to the service providers, started going over to Zoom and others, and that's where we started coming into the market a little bit stronger, because that's what enabled people to be able to put together a conference room and piece part it and be able to get conference rooms together with USB devices, using standardized off of PCs or Macs. But now we're seeing a new era now. We're slowly transitioning to another era of video conferencing, I feel. And, that's kind of being pushed by the industry altogether, or the tech industry altogether. That's going with AI enhancements. And now we're seeing
I want to talk about some of the AI that you've used. But first I want to congratulate you, because the partners that you have built to help make AI tracking and also help make audio and video together in rooms has been critical. You've got some of the big brands that you've partnered with here, everyone from Shure to Biamp to Clear One, Nareva, Audio Technica, Sennheiser. I mean, all the big audio companies. You've made it where you've opened up your connectivity such that your cameras are communicating with their mics are communicating with your cameras, which gives you this extra quality of tracking. Now, you brought up AI. AI is sort of, in my opinion, primed to replace everything. And I'll tell you something that I saw recently. We are not too far away, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but this is something we will do a session on. Maybe Megan will invite me to Emerging Tech Day. We could talk about this. We are less than 3 years away where this is no lie. Remember I said this, 2024, end of 24. We are less than 3 years away where you will be able to attend a meeting without actually attending a meeting. Your AI will be there. People will think you're there. That person will respond the way that you would normally respond on an online meeting, but you don't actually have to be there. And it is actually summating the meeting for you in real time. So it makes you a lot more efficient. I saw some technology from a couple of brands in our industry that showed me exactly that. And I know exactly how it's going to happen. But yet, you still have to have cameras, you still have to have microphones, and you still have to have these meetings, which I think is kind of interesting, Carl.
Yeah, no, it's actually kind of funny because when I worked at Blue Jeans, Krish, who is the one of the founders over there, he was talking about that. He was talking about having an avatar that would kind of supplement your attendance and pretty much have something that would not only summarize the meeting for you, but like pull you in if you really had to be there. And
really close to this, Carl. Let me tell you what I saw recently blew me away. I'm like, when somebody said that to me and just made the statement, I was like, come on. But then when I actually saw it working with me in the meeting, I was like, this is pretty awesome. So I'm very excited about where our industry is going. But I want to come back and talk about how you've integrated AI, because one of the things that you've done is some of even at the simplest level is your AI hybrid mode tracking functionality that you've added in your that is substantial, because one thing that people don't realize about this is that this is AI on the edge. So it doesn't require an in-room PC to do all this stuff, which means that you can use any of these cloud management systems. You can remove the AI from Zoom and Teams and allow Aver to manage this for you and get some really good stuff. So when the guy was talking about from Northwestern was talking about how they put cameras in every room, this is a reason for you to put multiple cameras in a room, because now you can basically capture everything simultaneously with just a couple of cameras.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely something to empower every user persona in a meeting. So when you think about that, when you look at what happens in a meeting, you have the presenters, you have the attendees, and usually you have people in the back making sure the meeting runs smoothly. You know what I mean? So, really important meeting, you usually have a meeting moderator, somebody that makes sure that everybody's muted, make sure that the cameras are framed up correctly, recall presets and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I think for us as a camera manufacturer or video conferencing hardware manufacturer is to be able to, help facilitate that user persona as far as the moderator. With the camera tracking options, that's been a great one for us. I mean, we have cameras that would be able to figure out, whether somebody is walking around, whether you need to be able to include like a whiteboard with that scenario, but being able to have a lower administrative cost within a deployment of a video conferencing network. I think that's one of the big goals for a lot of us right now, because usually when I worked in IT and I worked having to moderate those rooms and all that kind of stuff, it takes a toll on you, man. And so to be able to automate that, especially with multiple cameras, when you talk about.
You think about it, it wasn't even 10 years ago we had to have an AV operator in a room to do exactly what we're showing here on the screen. You had to have a person actually sitting there running it. And now with one camera, with AI on the edge, you can actually do all of this without an AV operator in there, and simultaneously capture the video and the audio, put it into Panopto automatically, as they were talking about, and even serving it up on a learning management system like Canvas or Sakai or something like that. All that sort of wrapped in the Aver flavor options.
Oh, exactly. And it's like, what you talked about, putting that processing on the edge, right now, I got devices connected up and I'm using my laptop to be able to power this meeting. And so, it kind of negates the need to have processing power within, either the conference room or the classroom or wherever you have it. Having that processing on the edge frees up processing power. And I can tell you right now, one of the big people that like that are the service providers, because then they don't have to put as much processing power in the cloud
Right.
or you're not using it from your PC itself, because, sometimes you could be in a meeting and Windows Update will kick on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Your processing power will get hammered or something like that, or a security scan. So being able to separate that power out and have that computation done on the edges is definitely more powerful.
And speaking of which, by the way, just last week, you guys announced that every single AVER product is now going to integrate NDI, which means that all the existing NDI capabilities that are out there and all the new stuff, you're going to have that sort of integrated protocol connectivity and control.
Yeah, no, it's one of our strives to make things easier to connect in the sense from a physical perspective. A lot of the new products that we're coming out with, we're kind of focused more on the ease of use, or to lower the administrative cost to be able to deploy it and install it. And so that usually means fewer connections, but having to get a low latency video protocol enabled within all of our Pro AV cameras. That's been a huge one for us. That's been really good, especially when you start getting into those breakout rooms, the big training rooms, breakout rooms, auditoriums, things of that nature.
Yeah. By the way, the last session, I thought it was really interesting how both the guys said they really didn't care much about 4K. But what's interesting is you're correct, and the remote participants don't need 4K. But it sure is nice to be able to capture the raw content in 4K, because then, number one, the AI has an easier capability of breaking things up. So, for example, in some of our classrooms, we actually shoot an entire room view, but actually can have an inset camera using one camera follow the presenter as they're moving around the room, so we can sort of mimic two cameras by only having one camera. Also, when you have an original copy of a guest speaking and stuff, having that master in 4K is nice. So although we're not presenting, he's correct, we're not presenting in 4K, and it's unfortunate that at Northwestern most professors are still presenting in 4:3. If they would switch them to Mac, I'm convinced, Carl, they would not use 4:3. But in any case, luckily most people are 16:9 now. But he's right. They're going to use 1080p at the highest resolution most of the time anyway. So they don't need that. But I want to touch on some of the specific things that you've done in and around education. We've got some B-roll to put up here as we go through some of these. You've got smart framing, you've got audio fencing, which is that awesome demo that you and I did.
That was such a good demo.
I mean, that thing has gotten so popular. But let's hold that image up there for just a second, because basically with audio fencing, that's sort of like view that you see there that's not grayed out. It's only capturing what's in the view of the camera. I think that was a game changer, because not only do I see this as changing things in the meeting room, but I also see this in the co-working space where there's lots of people on calls at the same time, being able to eliminate some of that ambient noise that's in there, that's in the meeting, that you typically get invaded into a meeting space. But I think that your smart framing functionality is very popular. Your audio framing functionality. Talk about audio framing for just a second.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what you mentioned before. I mean, it's a little bit like, audio tracking is, being able to talk, the camera zooms in on you and, frames you up, or, kind of does that. Somebody else talks, the camera's going to move and you're going to see that person talk. But the far end sees that movement. And remember, like what you talked about as far as having that 4K image and being able to manipulate the image within, that frame. So with audio framing, what the camera will do is it'll zoom out a little bit and, use a 4K image. But then when other people talk, it will kind of pause me, move to that person, and dissolve into into that other person talking. So with audio framing, it's a little bit more like a director's cut. A bit. And so it allows us to be able to give a more natural look for the far end, so they don't get motion sickness for everything else. Now, one of the big things that we're
works
really
in groups of people and individuals when you have a main presenter, but also when you're moving around a room. When you have a main presenter, you can basically hone in on the presenter, but then go back to the room. But it also works and gives individual shots when you have a room filled with individual people that are just talking, right?
Oh yeah. No, that's some of the things that we've kind of been working on, because one thing is being able to have, like, audio fencing, for instance. Right now, currently with our products, you turn on audio fencing. That's kind of the only mode like some of the video bars would be in. But what we're looking to do is being able to marry or get multiple AI features enabled. So being able to do like the audio framing with audio fencing. So if you're in that big breakout room in there scenario where you want to cut out the background noise, but then also have the voice track at the same time, is something that we're looking to do to implement pretty soon here.
Yeah, and you have your own version of an AI gallery shot as well, where you're able to use, because you're doing AI on the edge, you're sort of able to create your own versions of layouts that are not reliant on Zoom or Teams, and you have the same layout regardless of the platform, and you're not relying on the platforms, which is nice because you're not having to use their cloud management system.
Oh yeah, everybody loves that Brady Bunch view.
Exactly.
And being able to take out the excess conference room, view that a lot of people, when you're looking at somebody on the far end and, they just seem really small, you really can't get to see whether, they're reacting to what you're telling them or not. With that gallery view, if you see them on the far end in that view, it definitely crops them, manipulates the image to be able to put it into that layout that's better for people on the far end.
Yeah, because then they can see where everyone's sitting, but they also get an individual view from everyone in the room, and that's all done with one camera, which is nice. Now you can use multiple cameras, but it's actually done with one camera, and you don't actually have to use multiple cameras. Now let's go back to the classroom, because ultimately in the classroom the same functionality works, but most of the time there's one presenter, a professor, a teacher, and then you have students that are asking questions, right? And in that case, because of that scenario, we need two cameras. So that you need the primary camera on the presenter, the teacher all the time. You need the secondary camera shooting the students, and to give and he's right. We don't encourage students to join remotely, but the fact of the matter is students do get sick, and there are athletes that are traveling a lot and others. So we want to give them the ability to kind of feel like they're in the classroom. So student asks a question, raises their hand, asks a question. These same smart AI features work in a classroom just like they would work in a meeting room, do they not? Even though we're using two cameras, or do we have to use a different processor at that point in time?
Yeah, so I mean, to be able to, I mean, it really does depend on what will actually, deliver the image and be able to say, hey, this person's asking a question, switch to that camera there. And so that's where we came out with one of our products that I'll probably talk a little bit later on, which is our MT300, but that will allow you to connect up multiple cameras. And if one of those cameras is already doing the processing for that smart composition, where it's putting everybody in the Brady Bunch view, having that on the audience would be a powerful feature that we notice a lot of people are doing now. And then having the lecturer use one of our Pro AV tracking cameras, it makes for a very nice, smooth delivery.
So we're showing the MT300N now, which basically is a USB switch that allows you to connect multiple cameras into it. And then since your AI is on the edge, the processing is all still done in the camera, sending a message to the platform, whether it's Zoom or Teams, or in this case, even Meet, and actually doing the smart framing in the platform itself, or is it being done in the MT300?
Well, the MT300N is not only like a video switcher, so it will allow you to change the layout of it, but what it'll allow you to do is open up the APIs to those third-party audio providers like we were talking about. So now what you would be able to do is use our cameras. So let's just say that you wanted to use our Cam 520 Pro 3 or Cam 550. You would be able to have one of those cameras use that smart composition, and then you could use one of our Pro AV cameras like our TR535 to be able to actually zoom in on the lecturer. And so you would have the flexibility to say, okay, that the TR camera, have that be one of the main, hybrid mode type cameras. You could have one of our Cam 520 Pro 3s, be the smart gallery view. Heck, even throw in a third camera and say that one will be the voice tracking camera for the audience that will kick off, because either a Sennheiser or a Shure lobes opened up within their microphones, and switch to preset 2 type scenario.
And you can even use, technically, you could even use a video bar for this application as your second or third camera, because it's always there.
You can. I've used it before.
Yeah,
it'll take in either a USB or an HDMI video stream for that MT.
Yeah, and that's nice that you do have both available, by the way, USB and HDMI. Here's a question that just came up from Gavin Coetzer. Seeing such a rapid pace with newer model cameras being developed by AVER, would AVER look at would AVER consider a buyback program encouraging institutions to migrate from the older versions of PTZ cameras to new versions? And I guess the easiest way to do that would be to add an MT300 in. I mean, couldn't you add an MT300 into an existing room where you didn't have a AI-based camera, or would that work?
I mean, yeah, you can, but I mean, it would really depend on what kind of camera as well. I mean, because, we came out with the Cam 570 and the Cam 550 almost about 2 years ago, but yet just within the last 2 months, we implemented that smart composition within those cameras. So we're still enabling.
Upgradable. Isn't that firmware upgradable?
It was, yeah. We're still adding on to some of the older model cameras. But yeah, it really does depend on, which model they are, how old they were, but we're always flexible, and we'll definitely work with you, especially through, Disty and channel.
Yeah, Gavin, if you can't get right to the right rep, contact me at Gary@theraveagency.com. I'll get you in touch with Carl. He happens to be in South Africa, and I think this is a common question that people are going to ask, because, the truth of the matter is, Carl, as you know, we all rushed in the university community to upgrade the classrooms, fix the audio, fix the video in 2021 to get back open. But now it's 2024. The truth of the matter is, 3 years later, we didn't have AI on the edge back then. So I think things have changed. And obviously, in a 3 or 5 year cycle at a university, a lot of these universities are going to upgrade. I also know about some of the case studies that you've done. Seneca Polytech as a university is one that you guys have done. I mean, you've already worked with a lot of universities on some of these upgrades and sort of engineering the classroom so that you don't have to do as many hardware upgrades and more maybe software upgrades. University of Wisconsin Parkside, that's a great lecture hall where you've got multiple cameras capturing, and that's a good example of true lecture capture in that particular case. Indiana State University, where you actually have a lectern in addition to having a lecture capture, but also a venue where they're using it for outside guests coming in to speak, but they want to capture it at a higher resolution and share it with the rest of the university. So you're doing not just UC applications, not just video conferencing applications, but your cameras are quality enough. You're using the imagers, just like I don't know if I'm allowed to say the brand, but I will say that the imager brand that you're using is the same brand that's used in a lot of broadcast PTZ cameras as well. So you have the quality to be able to capture broadcast quality images, even in classroom applications.
Yeah, that's always been one of our goals, especially when we come out with different camera types. When we first came out with our the first USB camera that we came out with, the Cam 520 back in the day, that was really geared to be at that like a Sony level of camera image quality. Right. And so that's one of our foundations, I guess you could say, is to have that great video quality, because as we were talking about earlier with, the HSOT 323 and SIP-based era, those cameras are actually really good. The quality of the Polycom cameras, the Tamper cameras, life size, those were really good cameras. And then once we started getting into the USB peripheral side, everybody was using webcams to be able to connect those up. And so, getting those optical zoom cameras, are always going to get a better image out of an optical zoom camera compared to a fixed lens.
So I want to ask you about future technology releases, because it seems to me that when I look at camera companies, you're always the first one with the new features. But before we do, I want to ask you about the Phone 700, which I think is probably one of the best kept secrets in your organization. Everyone focuses on what you're doing with your camera technology, but talk about the Phone 700 with Cam really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, because, we've been working on audio technologies from our video bars, and then we had the Phone 540, which was a boundary type speakerphone. But what we found is that a lot of people were trying to put these on the ceiling. And so, going on with our directive is being able to have an easy to install solution we came out with the phone 700, which is a ceiling speakerphone. And so not only does it have 18 unidirectional microphones, or beamforming microphones, I should say, but what it does is it goes to a DSP hub that allows you to connect up 2 other cameras to it. And so from that hub, you could also connect up to a monitor and be able to have not only video, audio, and monitor connectivity on one USB cable, like the way I have right now on my laptop. And so, yeah, that phone 700, great solution that you could daisy chain 3 other speaker phones and enable great quality audio with, automatic gain control, noise cancellation, all that kind of stuff. Working that in conjunction with the audio features that work with the audio providers, it gives a really great audio solution.
I'll tell you where I see that. For those of you who are watching that are in the K through 12 space, if you want an easy way to drop in audio conferencing and video conferencing into a classroom in an all-in-one system, that's a product you ought to take a look at. Or if you're in a university and you have small classrooms, this is a great sort of all-in-one solution there as an option too. All right, I want to go back to my, I want to ask you about future stuff because like I said, you're always on the leading edge. And I know you know what I probably saw with regard to allowing you to attend a meeting without actually being at the meeting. Now, part of that is, some really cool future AI stuff. And one of the students that was in the classroom when they saw this with me said, it's interesting. Why does all the AI look kind of fake? And the person's response from Adobe was this: if we make it look too real, it will scare you too much. So we're intentionally making it look fake so that you can tell the difference between AI and real stuff. But we're ready to give you the real stuff, but we don't want to scare you too quickly. And I thought, man, that was a genius response. But what I saw when I saw this was real. Like, it looked real. It had the same colorimetry as my normal camera would have, same inflection of voice and look. So tell me where Aver is going to play in this space. What's the future? What can we expect from Aver?
Well, I mean, so, again, it's one of those types of scenarios where, we are looking to replace out that user persona within meeting rooms as far as moderators right now.
Yeah.
When you look at, the average attendees that come within meetings, right now, there is features that we have in there to be able to enhance the video image. And that's usually when you go into the settings, you can change white balance, you can change color tones, you can change saturation. And usually people nail down a room, but as the sun rises on the east, sets on the west, a room environment is very dynamic and changes up. And usually people would have to go in there and change things up for them to make themselves look good. I want to be able to use AI to be able to capture environmental data to be able to get the best quality image for people. But that's if they
don't know how to set white. So if they don't know how to set white balance and they go in and the camera is smart enough to know what's happening with the room at the time of day.
Because there's auto settings right now and there's other ones, but to be able to actually, use that intelligence to be able to, not allow people to, or not have to have people go in there and change those settings. So I know that's where we're aiming towards right now. But as you said, with AI functionality, the way I see it, multiple cameras within a room that you wouldn't see is something that I could see from a future standpoint. Because right now, and you can probably remember older cameras that had audio tracking with multiple cameras on there. As soon as the cameras move and see people in the room get distracted, they look and they're like, "Why is it moving like that?" And so for us is to be able to not only have cameras that have a low profile, not be seen from a hardware perspective. So when they're in a room, they don't get, distracted by that, but to have it work in conjunction to get the best image quality for people.
Well, if you think about how far cameras have come on mobile phones, and you think about how good they are and how long the zoom throw and capability is, capture, I should say, is we are probably at a spot where you could get really creative on cameras and strategic, almost James Bond, like put cameras around the facility and not even know that they're there, and then sum them together to be whatever kind of meeting you need it to be, right? Just have sort of like you're capturing the room and you're summing together only the pieces of the room that make up that particular meeting. So if you have a class of 50 students in there, it's capturing that. But if you have a meeting with 4 people in there, it's capturing that as if it was 2 separate AV setups.
Yeah, the way I always look at it is, video conferencing could go one of 2 ways. We could either be like Star Wars, where we get hologram images, or we could be like Star Trek, where it doesn't matter where you're at and what you who you're talking to. It's going to connect up on a big screen. You don't see cameras, and it's always framed up well. And so I'm rooting for Star Trek level of futuristic.
I don't know, man. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I'm kind of pulling for the holograms too.
I would not mind having a R2D2 unit around to help me facilitate that. But
I've got one. Hold on, where is my R2D2? I've got one around here somewhere in my office. I was going to grab it for you, but you have to deal with my BB-8 back here, my blue and red BB-8. Oh, wait, here you go. Hold on. Here you go. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
I beg to disagree on this because
this is where we will have a debate.
That's right. As was the key character in all of the Star Wars. But anyway, I don't know if people knew this, but Star Wars was actually about R2D2, right? He's the only one that was in all 9 movies. But in any case, hey, Carl, hey, I really appreciate this. You've been great. I mean, I like your enthusiasm first off, but I like the way that you sort of like explain things. And look, if you haven't experienced audio fencing, if you haven't experienced smart framing and audio smart composition, the functionalities that AI has afforded Aver to build into their cameras on the edge, you should contact Aver, your distributor for Aver, whoever, and get a demo. Carl will do demos. His team will do demos for you. You should check them out, averusa.com. It's easy to do these demos because you're going to see what you'd see remotely as a recording. And and as I said, they've partnered with all the audio companies. So no matter whose mic system you're using, you can stick their cameras in there and it'll automatically start tracking using the mic system. So you don't even have to have the AI functionality turned on if you didn't want to, but I think you will. Carl, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you joining me, man. And of course, if you want to connect with Carl, click on his name in the registration page or wherever the agenda for today is. You'll connect you to his LinkedIn profile. And it's been a great day. I want to bring Steph back on and see what she thinks about all this kind of futuristic stuff. One thing that came out of today that I was really impressed with, Steph, finally someone said the Apple.
Wait, I can't hear you. He said someone finally said the Apple, and then I heard nothing else. Maybe I'll never know. Legend says he's still telling me what he heard for the first time today, but I fear I cannot hear him.
Yeah, I'm back. Come on.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that I love the fact that one of our guests said that the Vision Pro was a game changer, and it was going to be one of the top. He was asked by Megan, what are 3 things that you think are part of the future of the industry? And that VR heads-up AR meeting technology, where you're able to put on a headset and be anywhere, anytime. He's right. When you pick up the Vision Pro for the first time, put it on, you're just blown away. Don't totally understand all the applications for it yet, but it just kind of blows you away. And so hopefully you enjoyed this session with Aver, Steph.
I did. I always love hearing from them. Obviously, I have come to know and love their product line over the past few years. But yeah, they just keep innovating. And like you mentioned to Carl at the top of your session, Gary, very impressed with them pushing NDI into all of their technology. I think that was really big, and that's a really, really cool deal. We actually got a question from an audience member earlier, and I didn't ask it during my panel that was on AV over IP and educational sessions, but someone asked, like, what's your experience with NDI? Do you think NDI is a reliable form of AV over IP?
So it isn't real time is the issue with regard to the pro AV market, right? I mean, it's got a different application. So it depends on what your application is. If your application is sending content around across the entire campus and actually having control of where the content goes, NDI is an easy way to do it. But if you're doing real-time lecture delivery, real-time, where you're going from one classroom to the next and you want a presenter to be able to be seen in real time, or you're capturing that content, or you need high quality, capture. It's not there yet, but I'll tell you what, as far as a protocol and control platform goes, it is the bomb. I mean, it's going to be great, and the mixture of sort of our way of AV over IP with NDI layered on top, it's going to be sort of like Dante layered on top of AV over IP. Even though you can do audio and AV over IP, we're still going to use Dante on top of in whatever AV over IP system we use.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good answer. I think that
Yeah.
that answers the question really well. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I
to anyone-
apologize for my mic issues, but
No, I
yeah,
mean,
this is what happens when you're live. You don't,
that's
we
what I
can't
said.
fake it. But luckily, I have 3 mics here, so I
And
just have to
that's
switch.
that is the beauty of someone who works in AV. You always have a backup and a backup, backup, and a backup, backup, backup
I
in
do. I
case
have 3
that goes
mics.
wrong. So yeah, that you were prepared, and I love that.
And
And I
how
think
did I
that's
sound
beautiful.
okay with this mic?
Yeah, you sound. That's amazing. It's
Do
perfect.
I know which mic this is? Is my backup?
The one that is below you, I'm guessing. No way. You're not using your iPhone.
Way. I'm using my iPhone wirelessly
Okay.
as a mic. So
Come
those
on,
of you
Apple
who,
commercial.
there
I
you
love
go.
that.
You can complain, but it did work on the fly as a backup. So
It
in
did,
any
didn't
case,
it? That was awesome. Okay. Well, thank you
that was
to
my
everyone.
third. That was my second backup. My first
Sec-
and my second failed. So this was my third.
Mm.
So this was my second
Well,
backup.
always
Third.
have a
no.
backup and a backup, backup, and a backup, backup, backup,
That's
everybody.
right. But it worked. I'll be
It
better
worked.
prepared next time. So.
It worked.
But it's
Well,
weird. My mic was working fine until we started the broadcast, and boom, it just
and then it
stopped.
just stopped.
I
That's
probably
like,
need to reboot my computer, and I didn't want to take the
yeah,
time to do that.
rookie mistake.
Rookie mistake. That's right. So, anyway, R2D2 says hello, Steph. He hasn't
That's
seen you in a
awesome.
while.
I love that anytime anyone brings up any piece of Star Wars paraphernalia, you have it, and usually
Well, I have it.
5
definitely.
feet from you within reaching distance.
That's
So
true. That's true.
where's the lightsaber?
Oh, lightsaber. Hold on.
Yep. We can't end a broadcast without a lightsaber.
You cannot.
There it is. That's amazing. It's lovely. Ooh, and it does sounds in real time.
It's real. Steph,
Oh,
you
it's
really
real. Sorry. He
Yes,
has mastered the Force. He is a Jedi. And that's beautiful.
Can't touch this part. It'll cut your hand
No,
off.
it'll cut your arm off. You need that. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for the first day of Launch Week 10. This has been EdTech Day. Thank you to Gary Kay and all of his beautiful Star Wars paraphernalia, and for his very smart brain that he used in that last
And to
session
Starburst
with
keeping me
Carl,
alive today.
and to his candy. And for if you joined today, you got yourself 2.5 CTS, CTSI, or CTS DRUs. And we hope you will join us for the rest of this week. And we thank you for your time and your ears and for paying attention. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.